I will start with reading the agenda. At 7, we have community input. At 7:05, the local emergency planning committee update. 7:20, commendations for police officers Mack and Taylor. At 7:30, a joint meeting with the finance committee. At 8:30, finalizing our input to the open space and recreation plan. At 8:45, the town administrators appoint. At 8:55, the appointment of Kim Kay, and I assume we'll take that out of order and do it earlier while Kim is still with us, but Kim Kay, Carlisle representative to the Minuteman Neshoba Health Group. At 9 o'clock, we'll have liaison reports, and at 9:10, adjournment. So if there's anybody here for community input, if you would please raise your hand. If you know how to do it, you can go to where it says participants at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and at the bottom of that whole list of participants, there's a little button that says raise hand, and that should bring you to the front screen if we have more than one screen, so that I can see you and recognize you. And seeing none, we'll wait. I'd like to wait until 7:05, Chief, if that's okay with you, in case there are any other people that come late, and give Barney a chance. Oh, there you are, Barney. Sorry, didn't see you before. Okay, you are you muted. Okay. And waiting to see if anybody else wants to do any public community input. Okay. We're a couple of minutes early, but I'm going to go ahead and recognize Chief Fisher to give us the LEPC update.
Thanks a million, Kate. Hello, all. So I think to just give kind of the 10,000 foot view of the LEPC update right now, most members of the LEPC are kind of focused on our midterm work. So whether we're working on planning like last night's caucus or other large public meetings, the vote, the town meeting in Carlisle, and that's kind of how to look at where we are right now. Specifically, we still do have some new cases in Carlisle, unfortunately, but our cases do remain low. But that brings me to our other midterm task that I would like to talk to all of you about tonight. And you might have seen my memorandum that I sent to the Selectmen, and it really is specific to the LEPC's work with Tim and other members of other folks that work in Town Hall about the reopening of Town Hall and about increasing face-to-face work at Town Hall. So I sent out, I hope everybody has, working draft documents. I sent out 4 things. First, a cover letter to the Board of Selectmen asking all of you to consider a couple of things. The first is that, number one, you consider allowing us to reopen Town Hall on a limited basis beginning June 1st. The second major piece of that is one of the things we're going to need to do is to keep folks safe, both residents safe that want to come in and use the services in Town Hall as well as the employees. And one of the things we're hoping to be able to do is hire someone that we've called the gatekeeper, but yesterday during an LEPC meeting, I was asked to soften that language up. Maybe it was called a receptionist. You know, I tend to gravitate to the cop language and probably shouldn't have letter. So a receptionist is probably a better way of saying it. But that person, I would ask that the Board of Selectmen considering allowing Tim to hire someone to work 19 hours a week to take care of the basically 4 hours each day, Monday through Thursday, that Town Hall be accessed, and potentially a few other hours Friday or other times. But in brief, that person would be in charge of ensuring that people that are coming in have an appointment, that they have whatever protective gear they need to see someone, and that they in fact need to be there. So we're going to try to limit drop-in. So there's still going to be people that need to drop in. There's going to be people that need to come in and see Kim in finance, in the financial office. There's people that do drop in to see Peggy at town clerks. And there's some of our residents, frankly, that, you know, are not going to make an appointment either online or via phone, and we'll need to make that in person. So in other words, that person will be a helper to make sure that our town hall work is safe. So that's the cover letter I sent to all of you. The other two documents were, one was for the employees about what they need to do and what we hope to do to keep them safe. And the other is a working document for our residents so they understand what the plan is going forward. We've already had some updates to these. So Joan added some thoughts about the about how she would like the Council on Aging to be considered on these documents. So again, these are just working documents, and it was a first draft, and a bunch of people caught things that they would like better for the second round. The last document is a list basically of 8 questions that are frequently used. These were, well, I'll put them on the spot. Our friend Alan Lewis saw these for a very high profile university, and they looked well vetted and safe, and we tweaked them for use here in Carlisle. So those are the 4 documents I sent, and 2 requests I have for the Board of Selectmen. Number 1, potentially enabling an opening, a soft opening, if you will, of Town Hall beginning June 1st, and the second, the ability to hire someone for 19 hours to help keep everybody safe in Town Hall. So from the LEPC side, that's kind of what I hope to present tonight, because nothing else is going on that was, well, everybody's has really important work they're doing during this time. I think that this best summarizes what stage we're at right now.
Okay. Is there anybody else from the LEPC who would like to add anything to the Chief's presentation?
Laurie's here. I'll put her on the spot. What'd I forget, Laurie? You never miss a meeting.
I was kind of, Laurie, you're muted though. I was kind of looking at her on my screen too.
No, I think it's good that we have a week in between for the Board of Selectmen to review these documents. I think they're thorough, but they can always use a second set of eyes, or several other sets of eyes to look at them. So they're ready to go out to the public, but I think they've been thoughtfully put together.
Great. Board of Selectmen, do you have questions, comments, concerns for LEPC?
No, they were doing a great job.
Yes, I agree. And I want to thank the LEPC yet again for all the time, the consideration and care and the careful care in crafting all these procedures. So I think what they need from us tonight is a motion to reopen, the opening on June 1st, because we have, our sign currently says 18th of May. And
Yes.
So we do need to change our sign yet again. But so we need a motion from us to do that and to support the promulgation of these documents so that everybody then is well informed.
I would move that we, go ahead.
I just want to say, so we're certain that the state is going to be allowing us to open it in this time frame?
I believe that yesterday, was yesterday Monday? Yeah, okay. At 1 o'clock, the governor introduced, openings, but this is, I think we could have been open this entire time actually because of the function that the town hall is serving. So, but
Yeah,
we, in abundance of caution, I think are going a little more slowly.
Yeah, Town Hall is designated as an essential service, so it is always eligible to be open. And I would move that we reestablish an opening date for town hall to be June 1st, 2020.
Second.
Okay,
I
so
just
that's
ask-
Alan Lewis was
Hold
made
on.
the motion.
Yeah, sorry.
Barney Arnold seconded. Is there any discussion? Barney?
Just a quick question. So I know we'll have to make a separate motion, but I just want to ask about the hiring of somebody for the 19 hours per week.
I want to talk about that separately, yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
let's do this.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, if you don't mind,
No
let's do
problem.
this first. So any further discussion on this motion? All right, so roll call.
Arnold, I.
Oscar Lilloye.
Brown eye.
Lewis, I.
Reed, aye. Good. So we will try to roll out our opening for the June 1st with these documents.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We can get the sign changed in the
We'll
Rotary.
get the sign changed to the Rotary. Okay. Yes, the bouncer, gatekeeper, receptionist. Do we, my question is, we have people working from home. Are they working full-time from home? Could they rotate in rather than having another, kind of dedicated employee for that position?
Well, I think this needs to be somebody who is specially trained to know what the criteria for entry are, who can be there during the window that the town hall is going to be open for public access. And it's something which is probably reimbursable from the money for the CARES Act because it is directly related to the COVID pandemic. And so I think it's somebody. I don't think we want to take people out of their regular jobs to sitting at the front door for 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. We should be able to find someone who could do that, and it needn't be an overly expensive operation, but it's certainly something that is necessary for the safety of both the employees and the public trying to gain entry to the town hall.
Okay. I think it's important that we make that case and that we don't just run out and hire.
Right.
someone.
Yep.
Exactly.
And that was my question was about being sure that we, or at least being reasonably confident that we could be reimbursed for this through the CARES Act as a COVID-related expense. So.
Yeah, especially, we have frozen all positions for this year. Otherwise, I'm trying to be very careful.
I just have the CARES Act, happen
Yes.
to have it in front of me, and it does have temporary staff to backfill sick, quarantine, municipal employees, or also including city, town management, janitorial, trash, other. So I think you could probably get it in there as a temporary staff
Yep.
on that.
Okay.
Not guaranteed, but
No,
Yep.
yeah.
that's
For
comforting.
compliance reporting, yeah.
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 You probably could.
I mean, it's not something we would normally have. It definitely is.
No, and it would be
related to the COVID.
temporary.
Yes.
It's not
Right.
a full.
Okay. So I believe we should probably have a motion around this as well, so that we can get right, Tim? I mean,
I would move that we authorize the town administrator to contract for a person to man the entry to the town hall during the emergency to provide for the safety of the employees and the public entering town hall.
Second.
okay, so that was moved by Alan and seconded by Luke. Is there any further discussion? We'll have a roll call vote.
Arnold, I.
Oscar Lilloye.
Brown eye.
Lewis, I.
Reed, aye. Okay.
Just kind of parenthetically, I don't know who might be waiting in the wings for this, but there are a number of college students that are home for the summer that are looking for work. And it's hard to find a summer job, obviously. So if we want to sort of reach into that audience at all.
Okay, well, I think we certainly want to, I think it would be nice, actually, do we want to talk about a policy for this? We have 20% unemployment in town right now. Do we want to, and can we, give preference to town resident?
I think we can leave it in the hands of the town administrator to make a responsible choice.
Okay.
I think I must have misunderstood what Alan was saying at the beginning. I thought that this was somebody that needed to have special training.
Well, there is a protocol that that the person has to be familiar with on what is allowable and what isn't allowable to gain entry to the town hall. So there's that kind of training. It's not like they have to go to school for a month. It's just being aware of what the rules and regulations are.
And rather than train a whole bunch of people, I think having one person who's been trained in the protocol makes sense.
Right. We might want two just in case one person can't make it someday. But
The only thing I was
see. So
wondering
your
is,
argument was just fewer people trained, not that they had to come already trained.
no.
I get it. Okay.
do you think the person that is hired needs to, is it beyond August?
And Sabi,
I
Kimosabi.
don't think we know that.
Right.
I don't think we know that, but I would be a little surprised if that person was finished by then.
Yeah.
That might be the issue with a college student, even though
I
that's
think
a
we
good
leave it
idea.
up to Tim.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else for LEPC? So LEPC, we are opening on June 1st, and Tim, we will have a receptionist in place by that date.
I like the term bouncer better.
Thank you. I liked it.
The town bouncer.
Okay. But it's not a police term. That's why the chief didn't want to use it.
That's right.
That's right, gatekeeper.
Well, it's 7:18. I think we can move along to our commendations for police officers Mack and Taylor. I've written, well, I haven't written, but there is a letter that the board of, that I would like to send to police officers Mack and Taylor. Basically, they're the same letter to both. And I'd like to read it and get a vote of approval from you for me to send these letters. Dear Sergeant Mack and Patrolman Taylor, the Board of Selectmen wishes to commend you for your recent life-saving actions on an emergency call in April of 2020 when you responded to a reported call for a man in severe distress. You rescued him from a precarious position and then performed life-saving care. Both your immediate actions and critical care were instrumental in saving his life. The board wishes to take this opportunity to thank you publicly for these actions. You bring great credit to yourself and to the Carlisle Police Department through your actions. Again, the board wishes to express its gratitude to you and hope for great success in your law enforcement careers.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I'd like to have support of the board to sign this letter on behalf of the selectmen and put copies of these in their files.
I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the signing and sending of the letters of commendation.
Second.
All right, that was Barney that made the motion and Alan that seconded. I'd like to have a roll call vote, please.
Arnold, I.
Oscar Lilloye.
Louis, aye.
Nathan.
You're
Sorry, Brown eye. That's why you didn't hear my second. I was muted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Brown eye.
And Reed, aye. Okay.
Yeah.
So on behalf of the board, Chief, I hope you will convey our sincere gratitude and appreciation for the fine actions of these two gentlemen.
It would be my honor.
Thank
to do
you.
that. Thank you all.
Okay. At 7:30, we're to meet with the FinCom And I see a lot of them here, but if they wouldn't mind, I'd like to just quickly do a couple of very short items. And one is to finalize our input to the open space plan, because I do see, I thought I saw David Friedman. I sent around the proposed edits. Did anybody have a chance to read them, and were there any comments on them? If not, I will send them on to Mr. Friedman.
They all look good to me.
I read them and they look fine.
Okay,
Me
agree.
too.
great. So I will send those to Mr. Friedman. Thank you. Then there's the appointment of Kim Kane to the Carlisle as the Carlisle representative to Minuteman and Neshoba Health Group. Tim, did you want to explain that, or?
Sure. The town treasurer actually historically has been a representative to the health consortium that we're part of. Larry was many years ago. And Terry Colburn Dion actually was the chairman of the organization for a few years. I think that was the last time we did an appointment, when Kerry was here. So we need to update the appointment to that board so that, Kim is official more or less in representing the town's interests with the health consortium.
Are these appointments time limited, or are they just kind of until our lifetime, or?
Well, I think it's until a
Until a
successor is
successor.
qualified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as long as Kim is here, she would be our representative,
Okay.
which we hope is a very long time.
Yes.
So can I have a motion, please?
The official name, I move that we appoint Kim Kane as Carlisle's representative to is it Minuteman Neshoba Health Group.
Okay.
Second.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Barney.
Oh, Barney, sorry, thank you. So Alan made the motion, Barney seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Arnold, I.
Oskalilowite White.
Brown eye?
Louis, I.
Reed, aye. I was looking for somebody else.
Unanimous.
I'll tell you, it's getting tougher and tougher. I'm sorry. All right, so we've done that. We've done that. FinCom, are you all here? Everybody here that you want? Do you want to get started?
I
We're about 5 minutes
believe,
early.
I think the only person that is missing is Lynn. Lynn, are you on the line?
Or Aaron.
Aaron, I think it's-
Aaron's there.
Aaron's here.
Who's 8305?
that's probably me, my phone, my cell phone.
Oh, well, that's your cell phone. Okay.
Oh, I
Yep.
see. You also have a separate.
Yeah, network reliability is iffy sometimes when I have that many people in my house trying to get through at the same time. So this is my
Yeah.
backup.
You still only get one vote, Victor.
Oh,
Okay.
you caught me, Alan. I've been doing that all these meetings at FinCom.
Okay. Well, if you would like to start, go ahead. Otherwise, I suppose we could get started on our.
No, I think we can go ahead and get started. We're just 5 minutes early, and we have our quorum. So
Okay.
I'll take the note here at 7:25, and we'll convene FinCom to meet with the Board of Selectmen on the agenda item that's, or essentially on their agenda item to discuss FY21 budget as well as ATM recommendation from FinCom. All right, so just a little bit of context, and I know Kate was on our meeting on Thursday. So last week, FinCom began its efforts to begin to get our arms around the FY21 budget. It started the week, 2 extended meetings, about 4 hours each with a break in between, to really hear from the different departments around what a 5% reduction would mean. And I think there are certain observations I think we all made from that discussion. Not an easy exercise. I think for a large part of the departments and committees, it meant essentially, because of the nature of their budgets, it essentially means reducing services or reducing hours. I think the other thing that really kind of came about in that discussion, that we actually debriefed on Thursday, really is around the uncertainty that we have. I think FinCom is accountable for bringing a recommendation to town meeting around a budget. And the 5%, not haphazard, but was a number that we chose to stimulate the discussion across the different departments. And certainly we heard things from, for example, the schools in terms of uncertainty for next year in terms of how they're going to manage schooling the children. There's an uncertainty around how they're going to do that, whether some of the social distancing requirements would require a different way of kind of bringing them into the schools or whatnot. We also heard from like the police and COA, how the reality is that there are a lot of important services that need to be delivered to the town, especially during this time. And so we heard all of that. And as we convened on Thursday to really think through and begin to digest some of this, one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about and discussing is perhaps the item that we probably should cover off first, tonight, really is around whether addressing essentially the FY21 budget at a later date, meaning moving the town meeting, would be more advisable. And I think, I don't know, Tim, did you want to give me essentially chair for me to share slides, or did you want to put up the slides that I actually shared with you earlier today?
I'll make you a co-host, Victor, if that's
That's
all
fine.
right. Okay.
Yep, either way.
Let me find your number. Here we go.
Actually, it would be just my name, not the number.
The number. I mean your name. Gotcha. Okay.
My name, yep.
I think you should be all set.
All right, let's see if I can get this thing to work here. I'm gonna go down here. It says share screen, and I'm gonna share this one. Let me know if you can see that.
Yep.
It's there.
All right, I was able to navigate technology. All right, so I gave you the backdrop for our Thursday meeting, and we spent a large part of our Thursday meeting kind of discussing this aspect of consideration of the budget. So there are three areas of uncertainty that we kind of discussed, and you may or may not have read this in the Mosquito little article that they had out there, which I think they did a good job summarizing. I highlighted earlier uncertainty around CPS and the high school. What are the financial implications of how the schools operate in the next year, given the new normal or being on our way to the new normal? I think that was one of the key areas of uncertainty. The other aspect of uncertainty is really around the state funding. What will be the impact of reduced state revenue on local funding? And the third one is obviously, Kate was kind enough to send some information that she had around unemployment, being north of 20% in Carlisle at the projection or an estimate. And the question, even with that information, is what is the extent of the unemployment impact on Carlisle? Because while that is a good snapshot for now, there are many that are actually thinking that it's going to get worse before it gets better. So where and to what extent does that unemployment go, and ultimately what the impact is back to us? So those three areas of uncertainty led us to a robust discussion around, if we were to postpone a consideration of the budget until a later date, which would require us to move town meeting, would some of this be a little bit more clear? It's never going to be 100% clear, but would some of it become more clear? And the answer is, if you look up across all three of these, the answer is yes, right? I think CPS and CHS over the summer, I think we'll have a better clarity in terms of whether the 4-phase opening of the economy within Massachusetts, it progresses, or we end up in a place where we end up regressing, where, as the governor noted, it's like If we get to stage 2 and essentially there's increased hospitalization and increased deaths, then we're going to move back to stage 1. So I think given a couple of months and looking at the on Monday, essentially the briefing in terms of his timeline over the next month, so 6 weeks to 8 weeks or so, I think he's looking to make those progressions, through the different phases. And by the middle of summer, we'll have a pretty good idea of whether we're progressing in terms of opening it or actually not. And I think that will also give a better sense of, what we may need to do from a education standpoint. I think the same thing is state funding. I think Aaron is our kind of resident expert in that, and I certainly ask him to chime in on this. I think, given the summer, there's lots of discussion, not only in Massachusetts, but in all the states in terms of the impact of COVID on the economy, and ultimately what it means, for budgets. And if you actually read the news, I had something from the Wall Street Journal today, there's many states that are actually reducing even core services like fire department, police, and whatnot, or they're considering it at the moment. But given the summer and seeing where unemployment goes a bit, and that's the last bit of uncertainty, I think we'll have a better idea from the state perspective in terms of what they're projecting and what they're sensing is going to be the impact from a budget perspective. And the last one is unemployment. Obviously, that's very dependent on how we open up the economy, whether we can progress through the phases, whether we get stuck in the phases as we begin to try to open it up. And ultimately, we can have a better read in terms of the unemployment, given a couple of months as we're trying to reopen the economy. Right now, we just have a read as to what it looks like having shut down for 8 weeks. But now that we're opening it up, we can see whether that flattens, stops, or it shifts direction for us. And I think that will give us a better read in a couple of months. So those were the key aspects of the uncertainty that we discussed. There are other considerations. These are, some are financial, some are not necessarily financial. One is the budget reductions will likely increase discussion and interest at ATM. And this was evidenced by our 2 days of long meetings with the departments, where I'll tell you, it's like on Monday, I don't think I've ever seen more people at a FinCom meeting than on Monday when we're reviewing and discussing, the public school budget. And so that I think we had over 40 people, which is probably a record for us. But, if we actually go implement reductions, you got interested parties for the school, interested party for COA. Essentially, this is one thing that we need to kind of consider, which is not a financial one, but in order to be able to run a safe town meeting, I think the whole thought process is that we want to make sure it's quick, it's not protracted, and obviously, not having the entire town there on the field if we're doing it outside or inside. The second thing is, and this is a key consideration as well, is that the rescheduled date of ATM is actually dependent on the state of emergency. And I can be corrected on this, but my understanding is once that state of emergency is lifted, I believe it's 30 days we need to have a meeting in that. I don't think I got a good read on Monday whether that's going to change in terms of that declaration, but I think that's another consideration. And then, obviously we go to implications. I think a couple implications is that if we're to delay consideration of FY21 budget, any budget reductions would not be implemented until that period of time. One might argue that we automatically kind of have a somewhat of at least a flat budget or somewhat of a control in terms of the increase or reduction. But that said, if we took a 5% reduction, and that's where we ended up going, it would not start month 1, right? It have to start month, whatever the ATM is that we have, it would start after that. And then there's that other consideration of other decisions, right? This is not the only decision that's on the warrant. There are other decisions that may need to be considered, and that's another implication that we obviously you guys need to consider as well. But from a financial standpoint, not unanimous, but nearly unanimous, I think the FinCom is recommending postponing it to gain a bit more visibility in terms of the uncertainty that will help us to better understand the degree of reductions that we may need to take for FY21. So I'll pause there, allow any of the FinCom members, if there's anything that I missed, anything that you want to add, feel free, and then I think we just open it up to discussion. We can allow the group to have a discussion around that. Anything from FinCom in terms of what I just shared?
I think you did great, Victor.
Oh, good.
All right. So we can begin the discussion around this, and this is obviously our thoughts. There are some things that will happen the next, few weeks or so. It's not that if it gets delayed that we're going to kind of stop thinking about the budget. I think there'll be continued discussion around that. But any thoughts from the Board of Selectmen in terms of what was shared? And Kate, you certainly can chime in too, because you were definitely a part of that lengthy discussion that we had on Thursday around this.
Well, you guys did the discussion. I mean, I just, I listened. I gave you the information about the unemployment.
Yeah.
I have some questions, if I may.
Yes.
So, we're already planning on a fall town meeting. Is it possible for us to do a budget and then revise that budget in a fall town meeting?
Yes, I believe, and I could be corrected on this one, I believe it is possible to do that. That's one of the, I think Jim Dar had brought that up for consideration.
Just because I think it would be good for people to kind of know kind of what our priorities are for the year, even though COVID is going on. And I think that we kind of lose that without a town meeting and without some kind of a budget, though probably greatly reduced budget. Or I don't even know. I mean, can you do like a half a year budget or what? Well, maybe that would be stupid, but but just with the idea that there will be another annual town meeting. There are other things. There are other warrant articles. I mean, certainly, there's other warrant articles that I'd be willing to axe even more just for financial reasons. But there's some that I really think that we need to address. So I think the drawback of no annual town meeting is fairly significant because there's things that I think the town should be considering. But I totally get what you're saying is that there's so much up in the air. It seems to me like it would make sense for us to put something together, knowing that we're going to revise it when we learn more in the future.
And Nathan, are you suggesting that the budget that we put together would then be adopted at a town meeting in June?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. I'm suggesting that that the town knows what our direction is, and we've set the goals rather than just doing a 1/20th, because the 1/20th doesn't give us some of the warrant article items.
Correct.
Those have to be specified. So, for instance,
That's
no
right.
complete streets. If we don't do annual town meeting,
Right.
that's just gone. We don't have that opportunity anymore. I think there's other ones. I just quickly looked, and that popped up. I mean, Municipal Facilities Committee. I'd be willing to say let's deal with that in the fall when we know more about where we are. But I'd hate to just completely punt the annual town meeting.
So, and so this is partly my ignorance as well in terms of this. Again, I think one of the considerations that, we can surface it back up is, I'll kind of put it out there. If we put a 5% reduction and it hits home, there is going to be a lot of discussion, or actually there's going to be a lot of comment on it. So that I think that's a consideration to make with regards to this. But certainly we can talk about how we might be able to mitigate that in other ways. One question that I did ask, and this could be my ignorance, right? So we're not fully through the the fiscal year. But is it possible, and the whole concept of special town meetings, is there things that the town wants to consider, and it's not your annual town meeting where you consider the budget in its entirety? Is that, and I think it surfaces as an option or a question to Tim, whether it makes sense to take a small set of articles and send it through kind of a shortened special town meeting where you're not actually, putting forward a budget that has reasonably impactful reductions to it, and just consider those warrant articles through that. I don't know if that, special town meetings have to be done in the fall, but in concept that the year is not over yet and we haven't had our annual town meeting for the next year, I'm not sure whether that was an option or not. That was one thought that I had earlier in the week.
Basically, you can have a special town meeting at any point during the year. I think if we were to have one in June, let's say, you could certainly vote on warrant articles and so forth. Without voting an operating budget, you'd be starting fiscal 21 with the 1/12 budget so that would be the scenario until you could vote an operating budget at a later point. I think it's certainly possible. I think the committee that's assisting the moderator with the planning of the town meeting, I think the feeling is if you can plan a town meeting and pull it off, you might as well vote the budget too. That if you can get 150 people in some location for 2 or 3 hours, you might as well do all the business you can do. I do agree that the warrant's been kind of skinny down a little bit. It could probably lose a few more articles and not really affect, and as Nathan said, there's some things that, are not so time sensitive that they couldn't wait a few months. I would think if you're going to have a town meeting in June, I would think it wouldn't make sense not to vote the operating budget.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
this is Melissa McMorrow. I was wondering if it would be helpful if Kim and maybe even Tim and Scott, I know, have been on a lot of statewide webinars or whatever you want to call them, where other people have been debating the pros and cons. Is there anything else either of you or any of you think is relevant to the decision?
This is Kim. I tend to get more the feeling that more are going to go with the 1/12. I was actually on with our field rep this morning with DLS, and we're trying to find out how late we could push it to actually make that decision, because a lot of towns are asking that, because you have to have your 1/12 budget approved in June in order to spend on July 1. If you don't have a town meeting budget or a 1/12 monthly budget approved by DLS, you cannot spend anything on July 1. So we're trying to find out what that window is the latest we could actually submit to the Department of Local Services to do a 1/12. Because you really probably couldn't wait and have a town meeting if something happened and try and put a 1/12 budget up on June 24th. So we're trying to find out when our absolute last date is that we have to make that decision.
I think that what I've heard is that DLS is recommending even towns that are planning on a June town meeting as a
To
precautionary
get it
measure
together.
to submit that 1/12 budget, because disaster could strike, and maybe you can't have town meeting for some
Right.
unforeseen
Yep.
reason, and you're
Yeah.
you'd be dead in the water if you didn't have the
Right.
1/12.
We have a hurricane on the day of the week of town meeting, yeah.
Right.
Right. I think what
Or-
we're doing is they would rather, if everybody's definite on it, has made the decision, they'll get those in first instead of town that might have it, because there's going to be a lot to adopt out. So there is going to be a deadline on it. But yes, we have to prepare for both.
I think
So,
there
I
was
mean, it makes sense to prepare for the 1/12 town meeting. Victor, I mean, how much deeper of a cut is the 5% over a flat budget from last year? It's not that deep, right?
So what? I'm not following exactly the question.
So you asked the departments to come up with a 5% cut in the budget that they had submitted, right?
Yeah, it was
I-
5% of guideline, right?
Of guideline. which was relatively flat to the prior year minus cost of living adjustments and whatnot. So if we did not pass a budget, essentially cost of living adjustments would not go into effect July 1st. That's one reduction that would automatically happen.
You
And
mean
in
if-
terms of the impact on the total budget, the 5% represents something a little over $1 million. Isn't that correct?
It's 1 point.
1.2 million or so?
Well,
Yep.
and I also, also understand no matter what, the high school budget will not be included in the operating budget. That is going to automatically go to a 1/12 budget, and that's roughly 20% of our operating budget.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
don't have a
And we have-
clear reflection of a budget. We can't put a real budget together.
And we have a contract, and it's not exactly 1.5 either, because some of it is under, contractual, right? So we can't really reduce those per se.
Right. My other concern is, and it came up when we were discussing preparing for the election, is without the mosquito publishing, and it only is available online, and a lot of people don't have online access, can the discussion occur townwide on many of these important topics when that in fact is a serious constraint on our information distributing ability?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of the things that was somewhat discussed as a part of the committee that is, and I'm part of that committee, and Wayne's not here yet, but in terms of how do you get information out and try to obviously minimize the amount of discussion at the annual town meeting. So obviously you don't want to be going like multiple nights, that very often happens. So part of that was, I think, trying to address that through, and I think this hits your point, Alan, having online, Zoom types of meetings, let's just say in terms of our presentation of the budget, trying to have the discussions before, having warrant articles, having video presentations to that posted in advance so if you could review it, some forum to be able to discuss it. But that all requires electronic media. And I think that's one of the things you're highlighting, Alan, is that not everybody may have accessibility to that.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
I mean,
Are we confident that that will change in September? I was the dissenter in the vote last week, and I've always made a practice of supporting the majority views, but I think I should at least express why I dissented from that vote. First is that we will maybe have less uncertainty in September. We will still have it next spring. We all expect this to carry into fiscal 22. And, we can't keep delaying important decisions. Secondly, I think, contrary to what Victor was just saying, I think it's important for citizens to have a chance to discuss these things in a forum like town meeting, if it is feasible to do that, because there is so much anxiety and doubt among those citizens. And this is the one annual time when people can get a sense of the state of the town. And then the third, and that'll be my last comment, is I think it sends, at least I think it sends a strange message for us to go into the next fiscal year actually spending exactly what we spent last July 19, spending July 20 the same amount, as if nothing has happened in between. And yet 20% of our fellow citizens are unemployed. So I feel like we need to take a crack at this. And a crack at reducing expenditures. But anyway, that was my basis for dissent, but otherwise I will withdraw. Thank you.
Yeah. And just to clarify what I was saying earlier, my comment wasn't that that's the best way of doing it, but I think there was a concern around the ability to be able to conduct a town meeting in the way that is safe without having some of the discussion happen beforehand. And I think that's where the conversation was going. And Wayne can certainly chime in when he gets here around that.
One other question. If we were to defer town meeting to the fall, the annual town meeting, and defer the budget until then, and went on the 1/12 mode for however many months we had to go on it, would that necessarily result in very draconian budgetary reductions for the rest of the year, or could those reductions be spread out over other years, for instance, probably through borrowing or something? I don't know. I don't know enough about how we finance things one way or the other to do that. But is that scenario where we would have to make very, very severe reductions later on in the year if we didn't do it earlier?
Yeah, so, at least in our discussion, essentially, if I'll use the example of the 5%, if after 3 months and we have the annual town meeting and we maintain that as the 5% reductions, obviously you've gone through 3 months of spend and now you have to kind of catch up to that. That said, and if it comes in underneath that and you end up saying, well, maybe it's 2%, then it might not be as the catch-up may not be as significant in that. And that, I just use it as a hypothetical example to describe. I don't know what the numbers would look like.
The 1/12 too is really what you want to do is I would consider keeping on like you've done now with the departments, don't spend anything that you don't have to or anything that's not necessary. So you'd kind of still tighten your belts. It wouldn't be like an open budget. You'd be taking a minimum of 1/12, figuring out what your expenditure estimate would be for that month for your operations in your general fund. And then you build on top of that your regional school district pension or a debt service. So you can control it. You're going to put in for expenditures and that of what you want to spend for that month. So you can pull back on the departments and, with their budgets and not be like, just the minimum of what you need, your salaries and what you need to operate through. Yeah. And then the hope would be in the fall, maybe what the state's going to do with their revenue, because that's going to dictate, what your tax rate would be and all that. So I do think with the 1/12, you're going to be very, conservative, with that too.
And the regional school district has told us they run under 1/12 for July and August, understandably.
Usually, yes.
Yeah.
And without the COLA, we save a couple percent.
Correct. You would not include COLA or any collective bargaining agreement that's not previously approved by a legislative body.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think the thing that, just clarification on the 1/12, I think people have heard the minimum of 1/12, but I think, and Kim, you can correct me, is if you don't spend the 1/12, it actually just carries forward, right, into
right, or if you give, correct, if you give but you're going to give an approved budget. If you say 3 million we'll spend in July, if you spend 2.8, that other 300,000 would roll into August, and then you'd submit a budget for August for if you wanted 2.6 that month because it's lower. And then the difference would roll, but you can't spend over what you've been approved to for that month.
Right.
So, Kim, are you saying, this is Barney, are you saying that that the FinCom would have to prepare a month-by-month budget that goes through?
Actually, the selectmen have to do it.
Okay, so
I mean, we do it we would sit down, Priscilla, myself, Tim, and there's a form that's coming out on Gateway, and we would sit down and see what our, start with our minimum 1/12 and see what our actual expenditures would be for operations for that month. And then obviously in July, it's going to be more because we have the retirement payment that's large. And that's important to do because there's a significant savings paying for that. So we would say, so we would then figure out our expenses, and then we would ask DOR, Sean Cronin would approve the budget that we requested. We cannot spend more than that. So if the bills are coming in, you're keeping track of it, you're spending that in July. And then in July, you're putting a budget together for August. And like Melissa said, the school's on a lower budget then. Yep. So that could be closer to the 1/12. You don't have any other big payment. So that month would be a little lower. And then once you set your town meeting, whatever your budget is operating, then you deduct what you'd spent over the last 3 months. And there's accounting, to it. But it's basically a month-by-month budget. Minimum 1/12, and based on what you need for operations to get through. So if we have a debt payment, that can be included in over the 1/12, so that you would do that. But you would keep your departments pretty, you know, I would suggest that no major expenditure or anything normally that whatever they kind of like is now, just spend only what you need to for your operations for this next few months.
I have one other question, and that is if we go and do our annual town meeting in June, do we need to add a warrant article on the warrant that would, I say, protect our free cash?
Well, your free cash, if you had an annual town meeting before June 30th, your free cash amount would then, whatever you spent, the rest would stop. And you wouldn't get free cash amount till you closed your books and did your balance sheet. So yes, you would want to put some of that free cash into like a stabilization fund or some type of reserve. So should you need that, you know, going forward, because that is a consideration. Free cash. If you don't have a town meeting on June 30th, it continues till you do have the actual annual town meeting, but it will close if you have the annual town meeting prior to June 30th.
And is there an advantage to having the town meeting before June 30th in terms of that?
No, I think some towns think it's more of an advantage after, because they might be able to see what their, you know, we have a smaller amount of state revenue, but the whole thing is just trying to see what your revenues are going to be to offset, so you know what type of budget you want. And predominantly Carlisle's is, you know, taxes.
Right.
And then depending on, but if, you know, state aid, certain things are cut a lot, we've got to compensate, you know, for that. And I guess having the free cash, you'd also know in an idea what your free cash would be closing FY20, because you'd be a few months in and you could kind of do a little bit of finding out what your true revenues were, what your, you know, what closed FY20. So you're going to be able to see what you're looking into to the next year. So that gives you a little bit of a view that way. Where before town meeting, you're still having tax payments come in and a few more things. You're still paying bills through July 15th. You're not going to know what your surplus, so to speak, is in FY20 till a little later into the summer.
So Kim, just two follow-up questions. You know, one is on this particular topic, you did say that there was something we could do as a warrant article in order to protect ourselves against what you're talking about with right now with free cash.
Right, but you could, if you have 2 million of free cash, and Scott was talking different ones, is you could put $1 million of it in your stabilization fund. And then in September, if you had a town meeting, you could use funds from the stabilization fund.
Okay, so it seems like to me like, you know, it seems to me like then this isn't an issue.
No.
It just means we have to have another warrant article. So, this isn't an issue.
If you would put it, if you're going to have an annual town meeting prior to June 30th, I would suggest, yeah, upping your reserve fund and putting an article in to put what you want as a reserve in your stabilization fund. And that's what.
And that would solve the negative that you were bringing up here.
Correct.
Okay. The other question I have was something you stated earlier about the 1/12. You said that you could, like, if you spent $300,000 less one month, you could carry it forward.
Forward.
But then you said that in any month you can't spend any more than you budgeted for that month. Well, I was confused.
So if you get, you know, 3 million and you didn't use, and you know, did 2.9, you have 100,000 at the end of the month, and you've got a budget for the next month for 2.5 million, you'd actually have 2.6 million. So you'd have what you had got approved by DOR, and if you had any money, any part of the budget left over from the prior month that you didn't pay a bill on.
Okay, so in any month you can't spend more than what was budgeted,
plus
or
if you have any reserve,
what was not spent from previous month's budgets.
Correct. And then each month, and if, of course, if you build too much, you've got you're giving this all to DOR on a monthly basis. All of a sudden, if you have a large amount sitting there, probably going to give you a reduced budget for the following month.
Okay.
So it's pretty much a month by month, and the selectmen have to approve the amount of the budget that you're submitting to DOR, and it has to be certified by the clerk, and then they approve it. And if it's reasonable, you shouldn't have a problem. If you're throwing 5 million out in 1 month and they don't see it, they could come back and say no, or, you know, vice versa. But it should pretty much be once we get going on it and doing it, pretty seamless in the sense of what we're going to be requesting and the backup for it. But it's all through Gateway, and there's documentation on what expenditures it covers. And it has to be voted and approved by the selectmen and then uploaded by the clerk of the selectmen.
But if we were to put forward an operating budget at town meeting in June, and it were to be passed, then we would just continue on that new FY21 budget, operating off of that budget.
Correct, unless you had a special town meeting and you made different votes and adjustments to it.
And Kim, also with the exception of the regional school committee
Correct,
budget,
correct.
automatic to 1/12.
Yep,
Correct.
That's automatic. That's
I
that's
get
not
that.
until not until Concord has their town meeting too.
Yeah, Kim, I have another question for you. Where are we right now in terms of FY20 and the collection of the final property tax payment from Carlisle residents?
Well, of course, it's still not late, so they have a chance to pay it, to the end. It's actually looking really, really good. There's only about a little over $1 million left outstanding, and that's with 250 taxpayers. So we're doing
so 250 people
tax
not
paid, and it
homeowners.
accounts to about $1 million, but it's still not late, and we could get it. So it's slowly coming in now, but it's we're doing well. That's a good number to be at.
Yeah, and then just so we're all on the same page, so whatever we do around a budget going into FY21, we would still be issuing the first round of the property tax bill for FY21.
Until I hear differently, yes. July 1,
July
the bills
1,
will
and
be
that
in the
would
mail
be
for a preliminary tax.
And that would be due in August, that first payment.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard anything on that. And obviously we'd probably have to borrow too if you have a lot of payments coming in. That's imperative to start the year with your money in your cash flow. But right now, July 1, the bills will go out due August 1st. I have heard no delay on that.
So the only real reason that I've heard not to go ahead and do the annual town meeting and the operating budget in that town meeting is because of a desire to not have a lot of discussion. It seems to me like, I completely agree with Jim. I think we should move forward. I think we should do a very lean budget, just with the understanding that we're going to have another round at it. We're going to take another crack at it in the fall, and in that way, we're not doing this month-to-month thing, which could just get us in trouble. And just be a whole lot more work. So I would, again, I think it needs to be a very lean budget. I think we need to have, a really good reason as to why we're doing it during town meeting. But we should do one and make sure that these other warrant articles, I think, the Board of Selectmen, I think we need to go back through and cut out other ones that are, that we don't think are super high priorities, or that can wait until the fall. And then just make sure that, that we are voting on other things. Like there's tax relief for some citizens in the warrant articles. I think, there's complete streets, and, we're going to lose that money. So I vote for moving forward with the town meeting with a very, very lean operating budget.
Yeah.
We have the discussion, and then next fall, we redo the budget again. And we put that article in that Kim was talking about to make sure we're preserving free cash in some way.
Yeah. So let me make sure that, sorry, Nathan, just let me make sure we clarify that the FinCom is not making a recommendation to not due to the fact of a discussion at the town meeting. When you say lean budget, these uncertainty factors are the piece that I think that's the thing that we're going to sit down with. How lean do you want to make it? are you not going to put COLA in? And these are all discussions that we can have, right? Or you're not going to put COLA in, you're going to apply 5%, are you going to ask for reductions in hours? Those are all pieces that, you know, when you say a very lean budget, that's exactly why the uncertainty plays into that, is how lean is very lean. But I just want to make sure it's clear, you know, the recommendation from FinCom has nothing to do with the annual town meeting and having a lot of people for discussion. That in the slide, as you see, is other considerations that was not necessarily the main focus of FinCom.
It was a safety concern
That's right.
Yeah.
that it might draw larger people, and it's really unknown variables at this time. It is the main basis for the recommendation.
And actually, this is Aaron. So just unfairness I'm sorry, I've been quiet the whole time, and I probably was on the opposite side of Jim in the meeting. So I do want to just throw in a couple of words on this. I think for my concern, it's multifold. One is from school's point of view, there are definitely going to be more requirements that schools are going to have to comply with to just reopen schools in September, if they do reopen. And so if we went ahead and decided a 5% cut on schools, not the high school, but obviously the elementary, middle school. So that might actually feel like a 10 or 15% cut, depending on what new policies they have to put in place. Like, for instance, if they have to do more buses or stagger the class times for students, you know, and basically pay their teachers more, you know, a 5% cut decided in late June might actually have the impact of something dramatically more. We don't know what Chapter 70 is going to do over the summer. The state's not going to know their closeout numbers for fiscal year 20 way later than normal. So normally we get all our money in April, or the majority of our tax revenue in April. That's happening in July now. And so my guess is the state budget's not going to be really settled into, you know, late July, maybe August. And so, so that was one point for me, you know, like it's really important to see what happens over the summer. The other point is any sort of decision to cut things, I'm sure people are going to want to vet that out publicly. And I personally don't feel comfortable going to a June town meeting from safety point of view, but I don't even know if it's even feasible, because best case scenario will be in phase 2 at that point. And everything I've read is, you know, it's 10 persons or under in a room. So I'm not sure how you would, you know, get that done. So just wanted to throw that out there.
I'd like to chime in. I started more on the side of we need to have a budget, and I've kind of gravitated toward the 1/12, and I support the 1/12. And I think a main reason is I do think we can accomplish the leaning of the budget that we need to over the summer months, and perhaps even more effectively through a 1/12 budget. If we take that approach, we know for certainty what the budgets look like, at least through the summer, in areas that we directly control, like OPEB. We wouldn't have long-term caps. These are levers that we would likely pull anyway to reduce the budget. We have certainty of what's going to happen. I do worry about going to a town meeting if there's a reduced quorum. There's a myriad of things that could happen, everything from smaller turnout, maybe more niche turnout supporting certain things. I expect we'll have contested or a lot of budget holds potentially, because we're going to have to finalize the budget recommendation next week. So we're not going to have approval of the school committee. We're not going to have necessarily sign off from the different areas. So you run the risk, there is a risk that the budget could get modified adversely in terms of warrants getting passed that might not otherwise be passed, or budget holds and budget amendments at town meeting that are above the 1/12 or above our recommendation. I don't know how that would play out, but to think that just by going to a town meeting, we're going to be in a better financial position, I think is, in terms of a leaner budget, I don't know that we can assume that. We're talking about July and August, and then maybe half of September that we need to bridge. And our biggest department schools, one, regional, we're going to have to just do a town meeting around that anyway. And the CPS budget is a lower spend month those months. So I think from financial standpoint, we can accomplish the leaning of the budget we need via the 1/12. And I think it just gives us more time to better understand what's going on with state aid, what's going on with local receipts. And I think it gives us more flexibility rather than saying, let's approve this budget now, we're going to change it later. That just creates, even more uncertainty. I think if you're letting people know this is the budget we're approving, but don't worry, we'll be back in the fall and we can change it. I just think there's a lot of unknowns to that approach that give me pause.
This is Barney. A couple of thoughts. One is, I understand the tightness of the timetable. If we were to want to put a warrant article up for the operating budget for next year, minus the high school, but I think it's really our collective job to make it possible ahead of time for people to participate in talking about that and discussing it. And I suspect that if we were to have hearings, that we would see a much greater participation via Zoom than we've had at hearings in the past. Now, obviously, if you're talking about cuts, then that'll definitely bring people out. But I think that's part of our job, to figure out how to get information out there and allow people to have an opportunity to talk about it before you get to town meeting. The other thought that I have is the proposed operating, it's not a choice between continue on 1/12 or propose a fiscal year 21 budget that's got a 5% across the board reduction, right? I mean, you could do something either varying the amount of the cut in particular departments or just a lower percentage. Am I right in thinking that?
We haven't made a budget recommendation. The 5% was what.
Right, I understand it was an exercise, but everybody came in with what their 5% would be.
No, the school did not present CPS did not present a 5% budget reduction.
Right, I heard that part of the their presentation, but I think I understand why they didn't do that in that public arena, but I'm just wondering, but have you all discussed the possibility of putting forward a budget for next year that is a smaller percentage reduction?
I don't think we ever assumed that there would automatically be a 5% cut for everybody. That's certainly something I would support.
Correct. Yeah. So because I think if you think of it from, Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I'm concerned about going forward, with the same budget that we've had. Even though I hear that you're saying we could figure out ways to, keep a close eye on that and potentially, be implementing reductions. But I'm concerned that should we get to the fall and see that, things have not improved, if anything, they're worse financially, then we're talking about a much bigger problem. That we haven't made any, we haven't taken any steps toward, tightening our belts other than what we can do kind of, on frankly, the quote, easier items that, don't involve reductions in hours or reductions in staff. And I understand that is really, really difficult. But I'm concerned about the impact of waiting.
Yeah. Well, see if I'm unmuted here. Yep. I guess the issue is if whatever reductions you take, if we're going in with a reduced budget on June 30th, then the only way you can accomplish the kind of reductions that we probably ought to be doing, or at least what we think we might have to be doing, is going to have personnel effects. And do you want to prematurely do those, fire people, frankly, if it turns out it isn't necessary? If we find out by the end of the summer that the cuts aren't as draconian as we thought they were, at least it gives us that kind of breathing room before we go around affecting a lot of people's lives. We can do it from a much better understanding of where we are financially.
So I just want to clarify, you're then arguing for the 1/12 budget.
Yeah, and that I originally didn't think that way, but I'm coming around very quickly to that. Yes.
Okay. I just want to be sure that
Yep,
I understood what you were saying.
Yep. I mean, that plus the fact that we're going to disenfranchise people who don't have the ability to participate in discussions or any kind of information input on Zoom. That's not a lot of people. I think it can be a very important component of our town constituency.
So it really, I'm not the, I'm not at the level of forecasting what the economy is going to do over the next summer, over the next 3 months. But are we really expecting it to be that we'll know a whole lot more in 2 months?
But I think we'll know more from what I've understood from listening in on the FinCom, is we'll know a lot more about the schools for sure. Because we'll know, are they opening? Are they not opening? Are they doing, is it going to be more expensive? Is it going to be less expensive? If they don't open, I don't think it's going to be more expensive. But if they do open, it for sure it's going to be more expensive. So I don't know. So that's one item right there. It's the schools.
And that's a big one. That's a big one.
It's most of our budget.
Right.
So cutting, honestly, we could cut 10% of the other part of the budget. We still won't be there.
It's over 60% of the budget.
Right. I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll have a lot better understanding of how the state might be going to address it as well. I mean, they're going to, we're property tax dependent, and that's probably, that's going to be delayed for some time for us probably. The state is sales tax dependent, and that's going to be a major cut that they're going to have to deal with.
Sales and income tax.
Sales and income tax, yep.
Yeah, and I did go back on the website. It's up another, unemployment is up another 1% since May 2nd. It went from 20.9 to 21.9 between May 2nd and May 9th now. So it's still trending up.
Yeah.
It hasn't flattened out yet. And that's in our town.
I would expect it to continue to slowly trend up until at least some of the economy begins to open back up. And I think the question is once that happens, does it continue to trend up? Because that is a very distinct possibility, or does it flatten out? Because of that. And I think that's part of the look forward in the next few months in terms of the phased opening. That's what I was saying earlier, is as you go through that, you can see whether that's having an effect, as well as whether you have to reverse, right? Whether you go to phase 3 and say, oh, shoot, COVID's coming back, we've got to reverse back. And, obviously over the next 6 weeks, you see it goes through a couple phases. We'll definitely have a good read as to whether it's all about how well people implement and follow the guidelines. Because I think, that's a big piece. That's a big question, right? They're asking people to sign off on it. Whether it ends up being done in practice, like I go to the grocery store and now people have masks and they don't really care if they're 6 feet from you anymore. And this is the general observation that I've had. Whether people adhere to it, that will be indicative in terms of whether the movement of the phases continues.
I want to say the other thing is my big nightmare is we pass a budget and we're cooking along, and the people that were able to pay their property taxes this time around because they had enough savings, they've been laid off, but they were able to scrape up enough money, or they might even, our next time around, or the time after that, the third quarter and fourth quarter might get worse, and our revenues get choked off, and we don't have any money to pay our salaries. And then, boy, I'll tell you, that'll be a fun job, figuring out, we can't go out and borrow money. We can't print any money. I've been thinking about it, but I've been told it's illegal.
I think we have that problem with either scenario though, Kate, right?
Well,
I mean, if it's a 1/12 budget, neither one of these budgets are that far off from each other. I think we have that problem either way.
well, we may, I don't know. As I said, all I can tell you is what, my own private little worries. Maybe they're unfounded and irrational, but they do keep me up at night.
Cash flows, keeps me up at night. Cash flow is,
Cash flow.
we'll have to see how they do. I'll have to do a RAN, revenue anticipation note, or borrow against stabilization, if we need to, for whatever to get through. A lot of towns, because they have a lot with local receipts that are going down, they're having a hard time right now, because they're closing the year with a big deficit on that. So there's a lot of unknowns, uncertainties.
So if we go with 1/12, could somebody describe to me what is the monthly process?
The full, I have Tim Seymour, they have not put the form actually up on the gateway yet. So we have not been able to see exactly what it is. But there's, they have a IGR kind of out on it right now of little bit of templates. So it'll be basically, again, starting with your minimum base 1/12, and then figuring if you have debt, assessments, or any major payments during that time, and putting the expenditures down and submitting, an expenditure budget to DOR. But we haven't seen all the guidelines, and we have not seen the form yet.
So the 1/12 is a minimum of 1/12 of last year's budget plus additional things that have come up that we need to do.
Right. And you want to be cautious with it. It's a minimum. It's basically, it's a 1/12, and you do minimum estimates to include operations for the town. You don't want to miss a debt payment. You don't want to miss the payment to the retirement board, because that'll cost you, the interest for 3 months on that. So that's a big one. So it's just a way to function so that towns can operate, but you do need to be concerned, because if you put a budget in September and it's lower and you've already spent X amount in the past 3 months, that's coming off of the top. So, and then there's also accounting direction that has to come out on that too, how to do it. But whatever you're spending in those 3 months is going to be deducted off whatever operating budget you vote when you finally have your town meeting.
We're not.
Well, eventually we'll have to have a town meeting.
It's up to what town meeting wants to do, right?
Right.
It seems like going 1/12 could actually end up costing us a lot more.
I guess the other question I have is, if we do it, let's say we do our 5% budget and we pass that, can we also still, freeze, the departments and say, but you can't spend it unless, or if there's something, discretionary, you can spend it, but only after it's been, all approved by, because, we still need to keep the brakes on until we know better where we are.
Right. And if you're doing a 1/12 and you haven't included something in a budget, and somebody comes in and says, hey, I have this $5,000 bill for this month, and it's not part of the, we're all going to have to work together on that too, to make sure we, so I think each month you'll be viewing you're basically going to look ahead of it and say, what are we going to pay, in July? And now in July, we're going to, put a budget in what bills are we paying in August? So you can't have a lot of surprise bills that are large coming in and out, because if you don't get them approved, you don't have the funds to pay for them. They'll then be pushed to the next month. So it would probably be, wise to have some type of, policy going through on certain, expenditures. Obviously, Tim would have to see him, or Priscilla, whoever is, we're working on the month by month budget,
I thought, Kim, you just said that when we do the month to month, there's the 1/12, which is a given, and then there's things over that.
They say it's a minimum 1/12. Again, the full guideline hasn't gone out, so this is what everybody's talking. It's minimum. So everybody thought 1/12. It's a minimum 1/12, and it's not a 1/12 of everybody's budget. So you would take your prior year operating budget and you'd say 1/12. Okay, can we get by on that for the month? No. If we can, then yes, we go with that amount. But if you can't, you would include in debt and certain other, higher payments on it.
Kim, you don't
Yeah, I'll
need-
jump in. It's Aaron. On the state side, we do this all the time. So the 1/12 budget is based on your cash flow the prior year, and it only becomes more than 1/12, like Kim said, is if you have like a lumpy payment like debt service or some sort of social benefit that happens that month that has to go out. So otherwise, it gives you more control over your budget. You could decide not to spend 1/12. You
Right.
could spend way below 1/12, but they'll only allow you to go to 1/12. So it'll be 1/12 of last year's budget plus anything sort of extra that you have to pay, like debt service, or on the state
Assessment.
side would be like local aid goes out quarterly. The state has to pay that. So it's a much tighter control. And I agree with Scott. Ironically, I think based on you won't have warrants, there's a real scenario here that you will end up, even with what you consider a cut budget in June, end up spending more money than what you would have spent under 1/12. So I agree with you, Scott, on that.
I see that Wayne has joined us. Are there any people that have questions about, or what do we want? Wayne, do you need to be brought up to speed as to what we're discussing here?
It's pretty obvious what you're discussing. And I'm sorry, I had an annual meeting of another organization I'm running that was scheduled 12 months ago, and I had to chair that. So sorry about that.
No need to apologize.
No need to update me in real time unless you want to ask me a question that I need to know what you were previously talking about in order to give you an intelligent answer.
Scott wants to say something.
I have a question. Understanding that we don't know what the potential town meeting format would be, but if we were in a scenario where we couldn't complete the town meeting for a variety of reasons, whether it's continued multiple nights, it's whatever, what would happen if we weren't able to close town meeting and we weren't able to reconvene town meeting? Could we then fall back on the 1/12 budget? I just have a concern of, given all the unknowns, if we're not able to complete the town meeting, what would happen?
My understanding is that if it's simply what you were just discussing, if for whatever reason you don't have an approved budget, you fall back on the 1/12.
And if you don't have a 1/12 approved, you do not spend any money on July 1.
Can you submit a 1/12 and approve a town meeting budget? Like can you hedge your bets?
That's what I was talking to Amy about before, is what's the actual dead on date? And if we think we're going to go through the town meeting, I'd still find out what the last date is that we'd have to submit a 1/12 and do it anyway. And then if for some reason town meeting didn't go through, you didn't get a quorum, you would have the 1/12 to fall back on.
Yeah, Wayne, some of the other conversation was about, let's say we had a, FY21 budget that we wanted to have on the town warrant in June, excluding the high school, and it included some cuts that were likely to be controversial, and so therefore you'd have a big turnout at town meeting. What's the ability, what's your sense at this point of the ability to have that and have it both be an opportunity for people to participate, but also done safely?
It really depends on how large you think it might be. You know, I think, you know, doing it on the plaza, the police chief's preliminary calculations were that you could safely fit probably 200 people or so. If you expected that we were going to get 400 or 500 people, then, you know, I think you need to plan on doing it either of two ways of doing it. One would be to move to Spalding and get a concert grade PA system, or a local broadcast or something like that, or alternatively, you'd have to move inside the school, and we'd go to the approach of having to basically use Zoom in a bunch of classrooms and have 400 or 500 people in each classroom. But even then, I think if you're just talking 400 or 500 people, I think that would overwhelm our ability to hold that. So I don't have a good answer for you, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Anybody from the board or FinCom have any more questions for one or another? Comments, ideas? Well, I think we have, sorry.
I think the other thing that comes into consideration, Kate, and I think you're aware of this as well, is like we're going to be meeting with Concord around essentially the Board of Selectmen Finance from both towns. In part, if I remember correctly, they have only postponed their town meeting by a month, with the hopes that, or potential of, extending it further into the fall. I think part of this too with the regional budget is, you know, if we do not, you know, put a regional budget number in there, it doesn't make sense to put it in there, because at this point there isn't a whole lot of information you have around that. Once there's certain scenarios in terms of if they go and have a town meeting approved, we need to institute a town meeting to be able to also review and approve. And I think there's different scenarios in terms of how that would work. So I think that's another thing to just kind of put in there. There is a meeting coming in, I think, was it Wednesday? I can't remember which day it was.
Thursday.
That we're going to be meeting with Concord. But that was one of the, on my next slide was some things that are going to happen in the next week or so around that.
Yes. Everybody looks so happy.
I'll just add one more uncertainty, which just comes under the category of government aid. You know, in the Great Recession, there was also federal aid, and one would have thought we would have more information on that by now, but that's, you know, another unknown.
My understanding too, and Aaron can jump in, is there's a lot of different pockets of money, like 40 different pockets with the CARES Act, and they really haven't necessarily, like there possibly could be separate money for like the schools and education and stuff like that to help with this, but that's still an unknown right now. Is that correct, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm with you. I unfortunately not up to speed on that one.
The last one that, yeah, I understand. So they want it, like we have our pocket of money, and then the schools are gonna, you know, they're still working it all down. They're also right now no money that towns can get. It's really for COVID related expenses. They can't use it as like a revenue supplement, but there may be talk in some towns in that if we don't use all the money, that could be the next phase or possibility. So this is all like an evolving kind of situation. Each day we learn more and more guidance comes out. And, you know, for Nathan, this is basically a deficit spending. We do not have a budget. So we're doing deficit spending, and the select board has to approve the expenditures that we're going to put on a month-by-month basis to DOR. So you'll be able to review and look at that and just just to let you know.
So I think we need to fish or cut bait here. And I think there were a couple of scenarios that I heard. One would be to continue planning our June 23rd town meeting with the budget minus the high school, the regional budget. Another would be to have a town meeting with just the warrant articles that we think we want, that we need, because there's some things that like tax relief in some of that. And a third is to not have a town meeting at all and push it past the summer. Did I capture the kind of the three scenarios?
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could, if anybody is in favor of number 3, no town meeting at all, that, because
Well,
I'm not.
Okay. So, well, okay, we can start with number 3. Luke, you want to, I don't know, you have anything you like to add?
Well,
Any of this?
I'm just looking through the warrant, right? And some of these articles, like the authorization of Chapter 90 funds, that's Article 7, and Article 8, Department revolving fund authorization, like that sort of thing. Does that, not having a town meeting to vote on just some of this stuff, right? Does that completely eliminate our ability to spend those sorts of things too?
The revolving funds my understanding would go as they were from last year. You would be able to run those the same.
Yeah.
How about Chapter 90?
Chapter 90, you wouldn't accept it. So unless you wanted to use it for a road thing, which, that unless you had a project that was pending it, you would just have whatever Chapter 90 money you had prior to.
You already have. Yeah. It's a tough one because, who knows if we're going to be in better shape 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, and it's hard to spend money you don't know you're going to get, especially if you don't get it, right?
From what I understand and again, the FinCom can correct me, it's not that we don't know if we'll be in better shape. We don't know if we'll be in worse shape. It's more than
yeah, no, and I get that, but no, I'm just saying even to have a town meeting in general, right? I'm not even thinking from a financial standpoint.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Because,
Yeah.
No, but that's fine. But and then also too, I know, Kim, that you said we're $1 million behind per se from 250 taxpayers, right? And the unfortunate thing is we don't know if that's real or not. How many of those 250 aren't going to pay come July 1? Because they just can't, right? And how many people are just holding off, right?
Right. That's the thing with you. You won't know your true revenue and all that till July 1. If it was extended to June 1st, I could tell you June 2nd and 3rd what that number is. That number you're not going to know until we're not in a bad place.
No.
with it. But yes, if nobody paid it, we could be out that $1 million. Yeah.
Right. Right, and that's a pretty tough hit for our town. Some of the things though that like a 2% COLA, right? Are there certain things that we could make retroactive, right? We don't necessarily implement the COLA right now.
Correct.
So
you could do it in September and start it from that date forward, or you could do it in September and do retro back to July 1.
Right. So are there? I'm just trying to think. Are there things that we can do now to cut some costs that maybe we can vote back in later on, and does it make sense to have a town meeting to do those sorts of things? I just I kind of have to default to FinCom here. You guys know a hell of a lot more about finances and that sort of thing than I do. But kind of what Jim and Nathan were saying, I hate pushing everything down the road if we don't have to. But yeah, I honestly I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I was certainly leaning toward an early town, our scheduled town meeting. I've pretty much changed my mind at this point. If I like to make decisions based on information, and we'll have a lot more information in a few months than we have now. and can make much more reasonable and informed decisions at that time, without doing anything draconian in the meantime. By using the 1/12 budget, we essentially do a status quo, and we can make whatever adjustments we need to make with a lot better information in a couple of months.
So I would like to ask you, Alan, so I'm hearing that you're saying don't pass a budget. What about a town meeting with other articles that we might not want to put off?
That's fine. I have no problem with that. I mean, to me, the key here in any town meeting is the budget. It's the most important thing we do, obviously.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to keep, all the.
Yeah. We can
trying to
do
build
all,
consensus here.
we can do all kinds of things that don't affect very much. And if we want to have a meeting to do that, that's fine. I'm not sure whether you want to go through all that trouble or not just to do that.
Is it? Yeah. Nathan, I'm going to circle back to you, if you don't mind.
I think I still feel the same way.
The same way you want a voter budget and the articles.
Yeah.
So we have no and okay.
And when you get around to it, I'm not sure if you can see his video, but David Friedman keeps raising his hand.
Okay, he's not on my screen.
That's what I thought I'd point it out.
Okay, thank you.
And can I just
let me finish this polling first. Yeah. Barney.
So I definitely would like to see us hold a town meeting and consider some of the warrant articles that are not the operating budget. I think there's some important pieces on there. And if we think we can do it safely, that we should. I guess I'm leaning more toward the 1/12 budget based on some of the comments that Aaron and others have made. If it's really the case that we have the ability to more closely control our budget if we're doing a 1/12 budget.
Okay. Luke just left the room, so I can't ask him.
Here he comes.
Oh, there he is. Sorry.
I had kids making weird noises in the background. I don't know what the hell they do on Tuesday nights. What they eat or what they drink. It seems like I get on this call and all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, well, they can.
So kind of what both Alan and Barney just said. I do think we should move forward with some of these. Maybe hold off on the budget piece. Because there are certain things that I think we can just get out of the way. I'm in the same boat. I think we should do something. Maybe go towards that 1/12 budget. I still want to think about that more. I don't know. And also too, I think we'll see how the Concord Carlisle FinCom meeting goes, right? And see what we can learn from that. But I do think we should try to do something if we can.
So something about the articles.
Yeah.
But I just need to be clear about what you think you're total. Did you say you're leaning towards the 1/12 budget?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was everybody, and that leaves me. And I think I'm also leaning towards the 1/12 and doing articles. So sort of a hybrid town meeting, or I don't know what you call it.
Modified
town meeting.
Can I just process question? I think with regard to the 1/12 versus a operating budget, I do think if we're going to present an operating budget at a town meeting in June, we do need to finalize it in the next week or so to be able to get it into the warrant book, to be able to set the public hearing. So
I agree. That's why I'm trying to get this decided tonight for you guys.
I think that's unlikely, Scott, though, because I'm the only one pushing for it.
Yeah, but okay. So at this point, let me just recognize David Friedman for his pearls of wisdom. David, you are mute, so.
Tim, could you unmute him? There you go.
There you go. Okay.
You can hear me?
Yeah,
Yep.
now we can.
Okay. Don't promise pearls of wisdom, but Tim Goddard at the very beginning made a comment that, you know, if you're going to go to the trouble of have a town meeting, you know, you might as well get as much done as you can. While I see the point to that, I think the other side of that from the safety standpoint is the shorter time everybody has to be together, the safer people will feel, and therefore the less likely you may be disenfranchising people who would feel uncomfortable being wherever it's going to be for 3 hours. Whereas if you don't have a budget and can keep it as lean and mean as you can, with everybody understanding that the big budget decisions are going to be made whenever that happens to be. And I don't think you're going to be guaranteeing a date, but, you know, sometime in the next 6 months, that, you know, if you can get everything done in an hour, there are a few things that are really, really important that I think it's still worth going to that effort, and may in fact be make a lot more people more comfortable.
Okay, thank you.
And the only other thing I wanted to say, just, you know, I don't know if and when we're going to get into specifics, but just to be clear, and I've sent this out and I think you've all seen this, but if we don't have a meeting and don't approve the additional funding for complete streets, we're essentially deciding not to do complete streets in terms of what's planned now, because it can't happen without an approval of funding on June 23rd, unless people are comfortable with, and we'd have to work this out with Gary, but comfortable with using Chapter 90 funds that Gary does have to finish it up. But just for those who had voted for no town meeting, that's essentially a vote to kill the Complete Streets project.
Yeah, I think nobody voted for no town meeting. They just voted for no budget at the town meeting, as far as I understood, among the selectmen.
Yeah, no, I was commenting on some of the FinCom comments.
Okay. Well, again, I don't think FinCom were, yeah. I think FinCom were voting on when to pass a budget, not on making
exactly.
a comment on town meeting. Yeah. Okay. I think we should vote, have a motion and a vote so that the FinCom is on real stable ground for not presenting a budget at town meeting. And for, you know, unless you think we want to go through the warrant articles first, but it's as much, I'd like to, you know, there's so much uncertainty. I'd just like, the reason I would like to go for a motion is so that everybody kind of can feel certain about one thing at least. And I may be just grasping at straws, but, and if you guys don't agree with me, that's fine. But I think it would be nice if we just codified this and made it really clear what the plan is. And from what I understand is we plan to have a town meeting on June 23rd, outdoors, and we will deal with all the warrant articles that we can deal with, but we will not pass an operating budget at that time because of the uncertainties of the, you know, we can pin it on the regional school if you want, that you know, and the fact that Concord is having their town meeting later. But I think we have to just come to a decision and go forward so that, you know, we're not jerking everybody around. Wayne. And oh yeah, there you are.
So yes, so not on the main aspect of budget or no budget, but just if you do want to proceed on June 23rd and outside, My advisory committee thinks that, sort of late June, when you've got possibility of thunder showers and also mosquitoes, thinks it would be wiser to have it earlier in the day. So, potentially on a Saturday, 10 o'clock in the morning, or 4 o'clock, if you want to keep it on the 23rd, 4 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that. So just one minor thing to think about that's just separate from your main concern here, but don't ignore it.
Okay, no, it's very important because I'd like to set a date. I think that actually it helps that the FinCom are no longer under pressure to get something all, tied up and wrapped with a bow for a certain date, in June. So we could do it even the weekend before the 23rd. We can push it forward to the Saturday, which is, I'm going to open
The
my
20th,
calendar. The
June
20th.
20th, the day summer begins.
Yeah, there you go. How appropriate is that?
All right, well, why don't I make a motion?
Oh, excuse me, but there's I have Old Home Day on my calendar.
And that's been canceled, is my
Has it been
understanding.
canceled?
Yeah, isn't that
Yes.
correct, Tim? Yeah.
Oh, okay, so we'll just replace it with new town meeting day on Saturday Saturday the 20th. And what time do we want to do? Do we want 2?
Can we deal with the date and the time separate from the question of what kind of town, the motion to vote on a town meeting?
Sure.
Okay, just because let's get it done.
Fine.
Close. So I make a motion that we hold a town meeting in June, at which time we will consider the warrant articles that are not the operating budget. And those warrant articles, which warrant articles will be determined by a future discussion, a subsequent discussion. I don't know.
Well, we have to do it by March 26th, right?
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
May 26th.
tonight we're just going to vote
May
on.
26th, I meant, sorry.
Yeah, tonight's just the motion about holding a town meeting, and if so, what will be considered on the town
Yes,
meeting,
right. Okay, but I'm just letting you, okay.
Okay, so let me see if I can say that more clearly. So I move that we hold a town meeting in June of 2020, and at which time we will consider the warrant articles that we will choose to put on the town meeting, exclusive of an operating budget for FY21.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, that was the motion was made by Barney and the second is Luke Ascalillo. We'll have a roll call vote. Barney?
Arnold, aye.
Ascalillo, aye.
It's kind of odd because I want to have a town meeting, but I don't want to have the operating thing. So I think I'm going to have to vote aye.
You don't want, oh, yeah, I see. Yeah, you want because yeah, okay.
Good.
Read aye.
Lewis, aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alan.
That's all right. We already had 3 votes.
All right, so we will have a town meeting at which certain warrant articles will be presented, but not an operating budget. Okay.
FinCom, you are reprieved.
Reprieve, but there's
feel like
still
a
work to be
reprieve.
done.
Not relieved.
So we have
Not relieved.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
for all your work. I mean, I know how many hours you've spent at this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but
A lot in the last 2
Absolutely.
weeks.
It has been. It
Yeah.
has been, but it's been good. I think it's been good discussions, and tonight it was reflective of the discussion we had last Thursday, which was, it is an involved discussion around this decision, even from the financial standpoint. So I think we saw that here tonight. And FinCom isn't taking a vacation. We will be meeting on Thursday because there are items that we need to kind of continue forward and have some discussions about. So definitely appreciate the time and the good discussion that we had this evening.
Now, are we going to go ahead tonight and review the warrant articles?
It's not on our
No.
agenda. I think it'll be on
Okay.
our next agenda, however, at this point, because now it's become
Right.
more
Yeah.
urgent, and we need to get the warrant out to
Right.
people. And
And
I
so-
think we need to write a cover letter so that it all gets explained when it gets
Right.
sent to the people.
It is
And,
on our agenda, though.
It is?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes, for 7:30.
Well, that's this meeting.
Yeah.
The warrant is, a review of the warrant is not on. Oh, there it is. Okay, yes, it is. Okay, well, we can do it tonight.
I just wondered if I mean, I know on some of them, there is an opinion or a vote from the FinCom, but on others of those warrant articles that may be financial, there's not, I
Yeah.
believe. So
Well-
I don't know, at some point, it would be good to hear from the FinCom about the
Actually, listen,
money-related ones.
that's right. We did want to do it tonight because we did want the FinCom here to opine about the moneyed ones.
Okay.
Okay, so
Do we need to circle back first, though, and talk about the date of the town meeting, or you want to save that for later or next week?
well, the reason it's important to have a date is because that date, it becomes the tail wagging the dog for a
In terms
number
of
of things in
printing.
terms of
Yeah.
the warrant. Is that correct, Tim?
Well, we had planned that the May 26th meeting would be the meeting that the warrant was finalized and the date. I guess in theory, you don't need to know the date until next Tuesday. So Wayne's committee could meet later in the week, and if their recommendation is the 20th or something else, you could add that to the warrant at that time. So
Okay.
I don't know if picking a date tonight that might have to change by next Tuesday, whether that's a good use of time or not.
No, okay,
Is
so what we need from Wayne's group, Wayne, if you would come with a recommendation next Tuesday as to date and time and place, that would be helpful for us.
Okay.
I think we should just quickly go through the articles so that there can be a more updated draft.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm gonna put mine, should I,
Can you pull it up?
I can put it on the screen if you, well, Tim, could you put it on your screen? You're the host, so you could.
I'll take a
Put 'em
shot
up.
at that.
I mean, I have them on my desktop, so if you wanted to allow me to.
Meeting. No.
You want to give me permission to share
meeting?
my screen? Because I can,
If you can do it quicker. Go
yeah,
ahead.
mine are
Yeah.
already up on my desktop, so I
Okay,
can.
then I'll make you the co-host as well.
Okay. You can just, actually, the other possibilities, you just allow me, give me permission to share screen.
I think you should be able to do it now.
Okay. Desktop. Let me see, that's it. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to roll down. Okay, there's the greetings, the consent agenda. I think we could, and Wayne could, maybe we need to get rid of the consent agenda for this meeting.
Sure.
I don't know. It usually
Well,
goes through awfully quickly.
Actually, I guess what I would say is, we can put in as many things on the consent agenda as you think can would actually be non-controversial and finish them up.
Okay, all right. So we leave it in, and we, on the consent agenda, we have Article 2, which is town reports. Article 3, salaries of elected officials. We'll leave that in there.
Yep.
Article 4, actuarial valuation of post-employment benefits. 5 is revaluation. 6, real estate tax exemption. 7, Chapter 90 authorization. Okay, 8, department revolving funds. 9, PEG. 10, fiscal year budget transfers. Are we going to have those?
I think that we will.
Okay, so we will leave that on. And so then it will not include Article 11, because we're not going to have Article 11.
Correct.
Okay, so that gets struck out. Article 12. Okay, that was not on the consent agenda. So that's that. So the consent agenda stays as was up through Article 10.
Yeah, so the only thing I would add is that you're certainly free as you go through the subsequent articles. If there's anything that you feel is genuinely non-controversial,
we can throw those in.
Hadn't in prior years included in the consent agenda. If you want to include it in the consent agenda this year, you're certainly welcome to do so. And you know, if some one voter objects to that, then they can say so and it gets pulled out. So it's
okay.
Sort of, you don't have to feel like you're being too dictatorial if you put more things in the consent agenda, because it's easy for someone to upset it if they think it's not appropriate.
Okay, so now we have, there's one of two ways we can work here. We can step through these articles one at a time, which is probably the way I would prefer. Talk about each one and decide, and then as part of the discussion, whether they go into the consent on the warrant to begin with and or in the consent agenda. So Article 12 is one such of those articles. Is it going to be on the warrant at all?
I don't think we should.
I would like also to poll the FinCom what their feeling is about.
Well, this is the one that's contingent on the grant.
Right.
The receipt of the Concord Carlisle Community Chest grant, which, you know, I think we should, they will know, at least according to the conversation I heard, what was that, a couple days ago with Joan, and anyway, is that they should hear from the Community Chest fairly soon.
And they did hear that they're going to get money, but they don't know whether this was part of it or not as of this morning.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
And I have to say, I'm wondering if some of this could also be reimbursed by, this position could be reimbursed by the COVID monies. Because a lot of the need right now we have, there's a great deal of pressure on the COA, and they really are using a lot more of their current part-time social worker because of the COVID. I guess I'm loath to take this off, especially if they get the 10,000.
Yeah.
Sorry, it costs us 10,000. It still costs us 10,000.
It's more like 50 from the community chest.
And they would be getting 50, so we would be throwing in 10. I think that was a pretty good match, and I would hate for them not to be able to get this position.
It's not 50 for this position.
No.
No, yes, 50 that they get total. You're right.
Right. And they don't know what they're going to get total just yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just my opinion on this is, I think we need this position now kind of more than ever. And, we'll see it. If they don't get the funding, they don't get the funding. But I do think it's something that we push for reimbursement for after. But I just don't know if we already appropriate the funds and vote them in, how does that work? So maybe that's something we need to figure out before we actually make a decision on this. Because if we're basically saying, we're going to fund the position, can we get reimbursed for it later, or would we be better off not funding it through a warrant article, much like the gatekeeper?
I was going to say.
Say we're going to get the position, right? Hire somebody for that position temporarily, and see if we can get reimbursed for it later. I just don't know enough about the reimbursement.
The only downside of that is they would lose the community chest money.
Yeah, it's just, but if we got reimbursed for it, then it goes back to community chest, right? So, yeah. So maybe just we need to do a bit more homework on that. So before next week.
I'm
not clear whether are you saying leave it on, Luke?
Well, no, I'm just saying, do we, I wouldn't include it in the consent piece, but if are we going to vote on it? I thought we were voting on everything next week, right? So we could take a week to find out, if we do vote it on, into the warrant and it passes the warrant, does that eliminate our ability to get the funds back later, as opposed to like with the gatekeeper position where we just hire that position and then apply for the reimbursement later? That would be my only concern, is if it's, it'd be like taking somebody who's already in the operating budget trying to get reimbursed for it.
As I understand the CARES Act, this one would be somewhat questionable. You get reimbursed for if you voted in a town meeting.
Right. Well, that's, yeah.
Agreed. I'm actually starting to think we don't put it on the warrant and we do hire the position because we really do need it. We try for the reimbursement, and we can always put it on a later town meeting.
Right. I agree.
So,
and what happens to the community chest grant if it includes funding for this position? You lose that portion?
Well, I have to come up with the 10 grand.
No, but I think we would just say to them, look at, we're trying to get funds for the CARES Act. If we do, then you can have the funds back, right? I mean, I think they take them back.
Yeah.
So that's just it. If we can get the CARES Act money, then it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Yes.
Okay.
If we can't, then then it's kind of a big hit. But
all right. So we're certainly not putting it in the consent agenda, and we would need to talk to COA, and I think we should do that soon.
If they get confirmed this week, we can take it off by next week.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Article 13, special appropriations. Are these, let me see. What do we want to do with that? These are things we really need to do.
And we do them almost every year as well.
And we do them every year. So maybe this could go on the consent agenda.
Although the Council on Aging position, I mean, I'm very supportive of it, but it may draw some questions if we're trying to, tighten our budget, tighten our belts.
Why do we always do why is this always outside of the budgets?
I'm not 100% sure. I think the consulting for the finance department is so that to call it out separately, and so that it doesn't just become part of their operating budgets.
It's also shared, so I don't think it's defined on one department of the other. Where people department,
right.
1 year the accountant might use all three and the treasurer 5, or vice versa, or a split.
Yeah.
It's also to carry over.
And it doesn't close.
Yeah, right. And this is the other social worker position with the COA. It's not the
Correct. Right.
Wouldn't fund the new one in any way.
Right. We certainly can't take that position away. We need that position. I mean,
they're already paying that they've already increased by 50% that position out of grant money.
Yeah. Um,
The only thing I
Okay.
would say is if we really wanted to tighten belts, would be to lose the map updates. I don't think that's going to kill us between now and fall. But
It's a reval year, so I don't know, Priscilla, how much do you have for that if they continue with a reval year? Or is it just the maps?
And this is not updating them to go
Mm.
get anything, online. This is
It's
related.
it can't be because it's been in the budget for years.
It's just updating the printed maps. It's the cost of
Yeah.
the people who update it and the cost of printing.
Okay.
Okay, so we didn't hear from Priscilla. Was she muted or?
No, David was right. It's the maps. It's not the revalve.
Okay,
It's not
okay.
money.
So we need to have those. Is that
Yeah.
correct? So we cannot lose those.
Well, theoretically, you work on the previous year's maps for another year. I mean, they're reference documents. You'd have to check with the assessors if you could postpone doing the annual update and make it not till the following year. I'm not sure that the world comes to an end. I don't know. The assessors don't rely on it for anything related to tax assessment. I don't think it's just a useful reference document.
Could go into the fall meeting.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think,
yeah, if it became critical, right?
yes.
Yeah. So let's move that to the fall meeting. Treasurer accountant. 3,500. Is there any wiggle room in that? And do you need it right away?
It could go to the fall.
I could go the fall.
Okay. So I think the only thing left in that is the Council on Aging.
Yes.
Okay. And that we have to keep that.
Yep.
All right, Article 14, we
Already
struck.
And then 15 is complete streets.
15th is complete streets. Well, let me ask you this, guys, you complete street guys. If this gets voted down, does that mean we cannot do the complete streets at all?
Unless, yeah, I would say yes, because if you put this out there and people say they don't want to do it for this money, for additional money, I don't think it would be appropriate to use Chapter 90 funds. I think we can make a pretty good case, and but either way, I mean, if you don't put it forward, it doesn't get done. So
that's what I was going to ask. If we don't put it forward, and we did have Chapter 90 funds in the bank that could be used for this, and maybe we could pare it down just a little so that it fits within the 250 and whatever, and the 50 and the Chapter 90 funds, we could do it and not have to ask.
Yeah, no, I think it would be inappropriate not to ask, because we did ask and told people it was going to cost X, and it's now like 2X. And so I think we need to ask, and I think we just need to make the case. And I don't think it would be a good idea to try to work around it. And there's not really anything significant that can be cut because of the way the grant and the bid process is gone. The amount and the work pretty much has to be what it is. And that'll be part of what we'll have to explain. And we'll do what we can to make the presentation as clear as possible and get information out ahead of time. And I can work with Luke and Tim, and maybe we do a mailing or something.
I mean, I would agree with that completely. I think if the town doesn't want to spend the money, we shouldn't be spending the money. And this is the opportunity for them to speak up.
Right.
Just a technical question here for Kim. Would this qualify as a capital project?
The complete street one?
Because capital projects aren't allowed in the 112th?
No, correct. Any capital projects are not considered in the 112th. So if you don't vote them here, nothing can be done in the 112th budget because it's based on your FY20 operating.
And just on the question of whether this can be, the amount requested can be reduced, what if the East Street portion, which my understanding is that was going to be covered, a lot of that was going to be covered by Chapter 90 funds. If that were eliminated from this project with the possibility that it could be done out of the Chapter 90 funds, how much of a reduction would that allow in terms of what would be asked of town meeting?
It's hard to quantify, but, and Tim can correct me if I'm wrong, I checked with Tim on this. Basically, again, because of the way the bid process was done and that we've already granted the bid, it's for a very specific state bid amount of work. And the selectmen have already approved the contract, and we cannot change it. It also is part of the East Street work. The way the state did the grant didn't entirely make sense, but they gave grant money for part of the East Street work, all of the sidewalk work, but not another part of it. So it's impossible to break out some and still get the grant. It's just not possible.
Is that something we've checked with council on?
Right, Tim can speak to it perhaps.
Well, council drafted the contract that Allied Paving agreed to. And council agrees that we bid a fixed scope of work for a fixed amount of funding. I don't know, if it, to change the scope before the project begins, I don't know if that's fair to the contractor. That, they bid on a certain amount of work, and to tell them at the last minute it's not this amount of work. I don't know if that's
Probably have to go out to bid
possible.
again.
Yeah,
Well,
I think exactly.
What if you did it differently? What if town meeting, we request a smaller amount, and that's the amount that is going to be allocated toward this project out of town funds, out of this, based on this article. But it doesn't necessarily mean we're asking them to change the scope of work. We're just going to find a different source of funds for the remainder.
Well, we already found all the funds that we can from Chapter 90 funds are already part of this, and we're going to explain that to town meeting. But it's totally not feasible. It's just we did talk to town council about whether we could question any item on the bid, and they said no, you can't. It's a complete package. You're accepting the full package, and that's one of the requirements of how state bid work.
So
I understand the motivation behind it, but it can't be done.
Because I just think that, well, I'll just say the obvious, that, I think from the standpoint of having more support for this project, but also recognizing that we're in a very different environment than we were in when we originally, when the town originally began supporting this project, that it would be preferable to be asking for less. And I understand, I hear what you're saying. I do want to raise then another question about it, which is, I thought that at the Board of Selectmen meeting where we first started discussing this post-COVID, that we had a discussion about not signing the contract until we had resolved some of this. So did I miss something, or did the board not actually take a vote to authorize the contract, but we went ahead and did it anyway?
You voted to award the contract to Allied Paving. The contract has not been signed by the board. The contract has contingency language that predicated on the town meeting vote being successful and the final piece of funding being in place. So you could sign the contract today, but it's contingent on the town meeting vote. So
I understand. Okay, so
Yeah.
that was my misunderstanding. And the contingency on the town meeting vote, does it specify the amount that we would have to authorize? That we'd have to vote in favor of?
It's just the total amount of the contract. Yeah, no, it doesn't specify that. I mean, I think that thinking that Chapter 90 funds are different from the funds that we appropriate at town meeting doesn't really help sell this. And I think that we need to do a good job of explaining why it costs what it costs, and that, you know, there was no explanation, and I wasn't part of the we at the time, but when this was presented last year at town meeting, there was no explanation or no anticipation of using Chapter 90 funds. It hadn't been thought through. It hadn't been bid. We didn't have full information. Now we do. We're going to present a complete case for it. And it, you know, it's the fact that it's on this warrant, given our concerns about everything else, is a, you know, is what it is, and it relates to the grant that will go away, and the importance of this to the town. And I actually think it's better to ask for the 150 than it is to try to get more money take more money out of the Chapter 90, because that hadn't even been made aware to town meeting previously. And the other part of it is we will do what we can to keep the costs down. The budget includes a 10% contingency, and we don't necessarily need to expend that. By the time we get to June, I believe that we will know whether we have reusable curbing from the school parking lot that I think is going to be taken apart by then. So we may be able to keep it down, but I actually think it's better to ask for the 150,000.
So on this contingency fund, now that's not something that is part of the contract with Allied Paving, right? That's something that the town project manager controls, correct?
Right. Yes. No. We are.
Yeah. So so my understanding is the contingency amount is quite larger than some might have recommended. So is it? I'm just even thinking, even if you come in and say, you know, we had a contingency fund in here of X amount, and we're going to reduce that by Y amount, because we recognize that, you know, we're trying very hard to keep costs down. Is that something you could do if you chose to?
Yes, you could do that if you chose to. And then I mean, basically what we're trying to do is saying, you know,
I understand what contingency funds are for. I
understand that. I'm just saying what we're trying to do is say we came to you once before, we're coming to you again, and it's a much, much higher amount. So we want to make sure that we cover all possible contingencies. There's a high number in there. Chief Fisher did a sort of seat of the pants, you know, 5-minute calculation for what the police detail would be. And so that's a much higher number. You know, we hope we don't need to spend that too. And I think the key is that we commit the Chapter 90 funds, the 200,000 Chapter 90 funds, and that any savings we have will come out of the tax part of it. So anything we don't spend in the contingency won't go into Chapter 90. All of it will come out of the amount appropriated, so we minimize the tax impact in terms of being able to give money back.
Well, gosh, I don't want to belabor this, and I'm not hearing anybody else on the board jump in on it, but I'll just make one more comment, which is I think I would really encourage another look at the amount that's being requested. And between now and next Tuesday's meeting, if there's a way to reduce the amount by looking at that contingency fund, and maybe it means instead of a back of the envelope estimate, you know, there's a more thorough process for figuring that out. And whatever that contingency amount is, that's what you live with. That's what you stick to. So I've said my piece.
Well, we will do that.
Any other board members have something to weigh in with on this?
Well, it's the kind of thing I think needs to go before the town. I don't support the article, but it's a I'm not opposed to putting it on the warrant so the town gets to decide.
Okay. Nathan, anything? No, and Luke?
No, I think everybody knows where I stand.
Yeah, we do. Okay, so Article 15 stays on this. It may get, hopefully, as per Barney's request, maybe the ask will be a little less, but we're going to move on to Article 16 for capital equipment. Are we going to leave any of this on?
So I'm the chair of long-term caps, and we have a few committee members on here. I can just say, speaking in the FinCom departmental meetings, generally these were the items that people were identifying as things to reduce their budgets. I think the most pressing item was the SCBA air compressor for the fire department. But even that one, I think, we can certainly push till fall. And if there was some kind of critical failure unexpectedly, there is the reserve fund that we have to replace equipment. So my personal view, not speaking for the committee, would be not to include any of these items or this article at all.
Nathan, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
I agree.
Yeah, okay.
I also agree.
I do too.
Yep.
Everybody agrees. All right. So that is off. Article 17, municipal facilities. I take it will also be off for all the same reasons.
I think so.
Do I hear any dissent? Article 18 is already off. Article 19, I do not want to take off personally. I don't know. Kim, this is the Capital Stabilization Fund.
You can hold off because if we're not going to fund it, it doesn't, it's just setting it up. So it's benign that way. You're not going to fund it.
The question is, are we not going to fund it? Why would we not fund it if we think we have some reserve?
Well, are you going to fund for capital or are you just going to fund a general stabilization fund? If you're going to fund for capital and use that as the expenditures for some of the other capital, then yes, put it on. I mean, I don't know how much controversy you're going to get on it. If you put it on, it's established, and then you can fund it anytime. You can't fund it without, putting it on. And if we're thinking of putting money in stabilization fund at this time, at this meeting, it would probably be a good idea to keep it. My question to Wayne is this considered a special town meeting, or is this an annual without an operating budget? Because the concern is if we had a town meeting prior to June 30th, our free cash would not carry over. And I just want to find out if that's going to happen or not. Because if it doesn't, then we need to fund stabilization funds.
Yeah.
That's a great question, and
I've been chewing on it for a while.
That thought hadn't occurred to me, so I have no idea, and I suspect that between your contacts at DOR and town council, you're in a much better position to get a good answer on that than I am.
Well, I don't think anybody's really doing this, so I'm not sure what the answer. I would be safe rather than sorry, and I would definitely put either an article or add an article to fund stabilization fund, and if you wanted to earmark part of it to capital for those articles that you do in the fall.
I don't think you want to earmark it to capital though, right? I think.
Well, if you earmarked to capital, you could put like the 300,000 if that's what you planned on doing for like long-term caps and kind of putting that as a placeholder and doing everything else to stabilization. Yeah. But I personally, they can give you, DOR can tell you certain things, but we're so close and I wouldn't want this printed and to find out our free cash closes. I don't know how FinCom feels. I would put some dry powder away. I would probably in a regular stabilization fund if you wanted to do a small amount in the capital for your long-term caps in the fall. But that's kind of, I mean, that could be like your placeholder for that if you're planning on going forward with them. My bigger concern is if free cash closes.
Yeah.
I think what I would propose, since it's getting late, is next Tuesday. Hopefully, Kim, you can have the answers to those things and whether and what we should do with FinCom.
No, I was planning on calling DOR. I was already with them today, tomorrow, so that I can talk to FinCom on, Thursday about this. But
Let's.
I don't know if it's precedented. It's ever been done.
But
so what they were.
We definitely want to have stabilization funds would be my guess. And I think on Tuesday, maybe we could hear the best way of dealing with that. And then we should just move on.
I agree. The question, so if the only other thing is, and that we want to answer about this is, do we think this would be, not the funding of it, but this Article 19 itself, do we think that that would be controversial? Or can we put it in the consent agenda? It's sort of housekeeping and sort of.
I would.
It requires a 2/3 vote. Is that?
No, that's later.
No, you're just establishing the fund. If you vote money in, it's a majority in and a 2/3 out. It used to be 2/3, 2/3. It's changed. Majority in, 2/3 out. I don't know if it's a 2/3 vote to establish a fund. I'll have to check that.
Says it right there.
Oh, it says a 2/3.
Yeah.
Oh, it does. Oh, okay.
To establish.
But let's do what Nathan suggests. We'll come back to it next Tuesday.
Okay. Public safety communications equipment tower lease is off because it's not being done. CPA annual recommendations.
Yeah, those can probably go to the fall. There's nothing pressing. Yeah.
Okay. That's mostly the transfers, motion to, okay, so they'll just go to the fall?
Yeah, and except for the budget piece, right? I mean, maybe, Priscilla and Kim can weigh in on this. Do we have to actually make the appropriations?
Allocations, yeah, I think.
Or allocations, I mean, yeah.
Well, you are required every year to do, the allocations and put the, put it in the reserves.
Yeah.
But it can be done in the fall.
You could probably do it in the fall. It would be, it's like, because you're not really spent out, but you'd have to make sure you reserve that 10%. If you're not going to do any CPA articles, I think you could hold off on that.
Okay.
All right. 22, cranberry bog is off. Increase income link. Okay, so this is 23 is something I think we wanted to keep. Nathan, this was one that you were talking about?
I would like to keep it.
I agree.
I agree.
All right, so we're keeping that. And we're keeping it as a separate article, not as a consent agenda article.
Correct.
All right, home rule petition for, that goes, so fall or who knows when. Increase town moderator's term to 3 years, same, unless, Wayne, you want to do that this time around? Because this would not, I don't think this one would be controversial.
No. And it would shorten the caucus.
Yeah, let's wait.
But the caucus was so much fun. Sure. Whatever you want.
Leave it in.
So leave it in?
Yeah.
Nathan, we have one in. Nathan, what about you?
I'm fine.
You're fine in. Luke?
Yeah, might as well leave it in.
In. Barney?
Yes, if we think it won't be controversial and take
No, this one definitely will not be controversial. So that's okay. So we'll leave that one in. Selectmen to select board.
So the reason why I think we should leave that out is just because I'm assuming, are we going to have the handouts of what is being changed?
Yeah.
But it could be kind of complicated. It could be kind of complicated getting that all out and described to everybody.
To me, it's not, yeah.
Fall.
And wait, what was 26? Oh, that was, again, it's the same thing, really.
Related, yeah.
27. Okay, we're done.
Yay.
I see David's hand up again. Yes.
Back to the complete streets, I have a question. Since the warrant And if you go back to the article, but it doesn't specify the amount, it just says.
It doesn't.
Funds. And I believe you can close the warrant with that and the amount can be later. I just want to check and see if planning for this, whatever you're going to call it, meeting, if it's because we could perhaps get a little better handle on this if Tim was able to schedule a meeting. We need to have some pre-construction meetings. And if we could arrange a pre-construction meeting with Allied Paving and with Chief Fisher, we might be able to get a better handle on how it's actually going to work. And therefore, Chief Fisher might have a better handle on what he needs in terms of police details, and we might have a better handle on what's likely to come up for contingency. If you don't have to know that by next Tuesday, because you've already agreed to have it in there and the warrant is what it is, if that's okay, then I would ask Tim to try to set that up as soon as we can, but it might be 2 meetings from now or 3 meetings from now before you would know what that dollar amount was, if that's okay.
You don't need the dollar amount until, the motion that's read at town meeting, technically.
Yeah, I mean, we want to have as much time.
it out there ahead of time.
Yes, we want to have as much time as we can, but if we're
Yeah.
comfortable, having it in 3 weeks instead of 1, we could actually have some information. Otherwise, I'm just trying to respond to Barney's request. Otherwise, we're going to be flying blind and it just makes it harder to sell.
Yeah, I think, Tim, as long as it meets, the deadline for when things have to get printed and mailed out,
Right.
that'd be fine.
Yeah, the warrant article is fine as it is.
Okay. So Tim, if you could reach out to Allied Paving and,
Sure.
I can be available. I trust Luke can, and Chief Fisher would be the main people, I think, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy. Okay. So, and I hate to bring this up, but Victor asked a question, which I think we need to have also clarity on, because all of this entire thing might be moot. And his question is, given the legislation to help municipal government during the COVID situation, we're able to go to a 1/12 budget if we have a town meeting, if we don't have a town meeting. So, okay. If we have a town meeting without a budget, though, it notes we can postpone town meeting beyond June 30th, and as a result, unable to approve budget, we can go to 1/12. But if we have town meeting without the budget, we're not postponing the meeting, only the budget discussion.
We can postpone the annual town meeting
And make this a
and
special.
make this a special.
Okay, so that, anyway, we do need to get clarity on that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Um,
Important point.
Because a lot of this could all be knocked into a cocked hat.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the warrants, on the budgets, on this Gordian knot that we are trying to untangle? Okay.
All good.
I appreciate everybody coming tonight and all your time and effort in preparation for this. David, thanks for your insights on some of these things. We will get back to it on Tuesday, a week from Tuesday. And I know you guys are going to talk again on Thursday. And on Thursday, we'll have some more information because we'll know more what Concord is doing and what some of the implications about that are for us. And hopefully also we'll have some more information about the special town meeting as opposed to a regular town meeting. Okay. Can I unshare my screen at this point?
Yep.
Yes.
So,
Great. Stop share. Great. Okay. I've lost my oh, here it is. My agenda. We finalized. Does the FinCom want to close their meeting? Or do you?
Yeah, I think we should be able to close the meeting
Okay.
after you've gone through the warrants.
I'll let you have airtime to do that.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, someone make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, roll call.
Catachio, aye.
Triola, aye.
McMorro, aye.
Dalia, aye.
Lipinski, aye.
James,
Jim
you're
Dar still on?
muted.
I think I spoke over Scott. Yeah, Catachio, aye.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Liang, aye.
Oh, and Liang, yes. Thank you again, guys.
Night.
Take care.
Night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Kim.
We're at the town administrator's report.
Yes. Okay, just a few items in my report tonight. First item, with respect to the CARES Act funding. We found out last week that the town is eligible for up to $462,000 in coronavirus relief funding for eligible activities. To be eligible, basic criteria is that it can't have been budgeted for. It has to be an unbudgeted expense related to the town's COVID response. So the departments are gathering their information on what they've expended to date, police and fire and the town and everyone else that has done something that's related. Priscilla is going to kind of cross-reference that with the expenses that she has pulled out over the past 2-3 months. And the first opportunity to submit for reimbursement, I think, is June the 5th. That program will reimburse through December 31st. So it's for funds spended to deal with COVID from the declaration of emergency in March through December. So we're certainly going to put in for the town's share of those funds because we do have expenses obviously related to the pandemic.
So
right.
for example, actually, the COA has increased the hours of their current social worker. They will probably have that on their list, for instance, because we would talk that, or because that wasn't budgeted, and that was a lot of it was COVID related. No,
I don't think they'll have that on their list because they're using the state grant, which they have to spend before June 30.
Okay.
Yeah, and much of that has to do with the homeless person.
Yeah, I know. Well, okay. Yeah, but yeah, it got worse because of the COVID though, because they couldn't place the homeless person because of the home. Okay.
Well.
All right.
Okay, item number 2, I think Kim mentioned earlier tonight that we'll be asking the board to vote to authorize deficit spending related to COVID. We don't have a motion for you tonight. We'll have that for next Tuesday. And that's also a requirement from DLS that the town has to vote to authorize that deficit spending. The state has to approve it, but we have to submit for it. Item number 3, attached to your packet, you have a request from the chair of the Municipal Facilities Committee requesting permission to begin repairs on the DPW salt shed. He's looking for guidance in light of the current freeze on discretionary spending. So I told Jerry I would bring that to the board tonight. If you want to discuss that tonight, or we can agenda that for next meeting, but that is their request.
What is the board's feeling on that one? I can give you a brief update. I mean, background on that salt shed and
what's the cost that we'd be authorizing?
$7,500 is what I recall.
Yes. Yep.
What happened is, before all this, the salt shed's been falling, been in bad repair. And so they stripped off some of the wood that was kind of, peeling off already anyway. And they wanted to make sure the members were sound. They found that most of it's sound, but there's a bunch of broken rafters up at the top. And so basically they want to reside the stuff that they peeled off in order to see inside. So they want to put that back and they want to fix the rafters. And because if they don't and they keep on loading too much salt and sand in the building will collapse, and it could collapse on somebody who was working in there. So we'd like to get it put back together.
So this is fixing the rafters, but also replacing what was taken off in order to check it?
Yeah. You know, without x-ray vision, you can't tell what's rotten and what's not inside so they had to peel some of this plywood that was siding off in order to look in to see.
And it can't be reused?
Well, it was in poor, they took off the pieces that were in poor condition.
Gotcha.
What does this actually get us in terms of lifespan, or is it just so it doesn't collapse tomorrow?
So well, it's not going to collapse tomorrow, but the guys are kind of rough with the equipment in there, you know, and that's why we have the broken rafters to begin with. So we're concerned that they bump it another time, you know.
Are they going to be putting anything in there? I mean,
yeah. What do you mean? Are they going?
Yeah, all that stuff the street sweepers been picking up is going in there.
Oh, well, they have to empty it out for them to work to do the work, so everything will be emptied out.
Yeah, but I mean, are we buying salt and sand now?
I don't believe we are now, but I don't know.
You're asking, Nathan, if there's a need for the shed?
I'm asking if the shed is going to be used over the next.
Oh, I see what you're asking.
Yeah, it's just an emergency. Yeah.
Oh. No, I don't think it's an emergency.
Then it's discretionary.
Then it's discretionary.
Yeah, you know, I was assuming that I assumed they still had salt and sand in there that they would have to take out. I had no idea they were putting street sweepings in there, because that's not some, I don't know what they do with that normally.
Well, I think they recycle it.
Oh, do they recycle it?
Yeah. Okay,
well, they have to, well, they'll want to have they'll want that to be protected ultimately.
But if it's not an emergency and we're saying limiting discretionary spending, I mean, shouldn't we stay consistent?
That's why, exactly. That's why, you know, I told MFC they needed to come to us to have that cleared. I don't, you know, I can't really answer that, whether it's an emergency. I don't think it's an emergency. However, you know, there's always the fact that it's now more open to the elements, and it's going to not certainly do anything good for its condition. So,
well, if it's going to cost more money by not doing it than it will be if we do it, that's a different thing. But that's the justification that needs to be made. I think that it's an emergency, and that if we don't do it, the damage to be done in the meantime is going to more than offset the cost.
Yeah, I can't answer that either.
Yeah, so if we could wait, you know, well, you know, through the summer, because we're not going to need the salt or sand, then we do it then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't recall the justification, but we need a good justification.
Yeah.
I think Bill were you raising your hand, Bill? Or no? No.
Bill Russo?
He's frozen.
Oh.
The letter is very still.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well.
Yeah, he is frozen because, all right.
All right, moving on.
He's rebooting.
Okay, is he trying to get back in?
Yeah.
Well, we could go on.
Go ahead and.
Oh, there he is.
There he is. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something, Bill?
Yeah, just a couple of things so you're aware. The ring around the base of the salt shed, plywood that protects the structural members, have been removed, and it's been off now for over a month and a half or so. And to protect that structure from future life, if we want to last another 10 years or so, that ring of plywood needs to be put back. You are, if you delay it until the fall, you are putting that structure at risk because of the deterioration that has happened over the years because it's an older building. So that piece of it should be done, in my opinion. You know, the rafters or the really trusses being repaired could be delayed, but we got a super price from the contractor to do it. So that would be my recommendation, that it be done, because it's going to cost us down the road if we don't do it. I know the town didn't want to, you know, purchase a new shed or replacement salt shed. So we really need to preserve this one that we have. That was all I wanted to say.
Okay. That was helpful.
So then I would say let's go ahead and do it. That sounds like it's an emergency.
That's
Yep.
what it sounds like to me too. Yep.
Yep. Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
very good.
Thank you, Bill.
And then the final item in my report is a
Now,
request
excuse me.
from.
Sorry,
I'm
Tim, do we
sorry.
have to make a motion on the previous one, or we can just say yes
That,
on the salt shed?
I don't think we need a motion. We could make a motion if you want to, but I
No, I did. I
That's a
just wanted to
general-
make sure we weren't being expected to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. Sorry, Tim.
Nope, that's quite all right. There's a request from the CCHS Parents Association to hang a banner across School Street in honor of the class of 2020. And they're hanging a similar banner in Concord Center. And they'd like to put up this banner expressing congratulations to the class of 2020 at CCHS.
I move that the Board of Selectmen permit the CCH Parents Association to hang a vinyl banner on School Street in honor of CCH class of 2020, saying congratulations to CCHS class of 2020, beginning tomorrow and going through middle of June 15th.
Second.
Because there's not going to be an old home banner, right?
Nope.
No.
So that's not overlapping with the one we approved for Old Home Day.
No.
There's nothing else that we've approved, right, Kim?
I don't think for that time frame, no.
Okay. I mean, they don't have to have it up that whole time. They just have that time frame to use.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And then, sorry, do we need to vote?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
So we had a motion. We had a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor by roll call.
Arnold, I.
Oscar Lilo, aye.
Brown eye.
Lewis, aye.
Reed, aye.
And then Kate, I see that Mary Lynn is.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. So, but let's, Tim, did you see the chat message?
Yeah.
There's a request that there was a request about doing a tribute for Carlisle's collegiate graduates.
Mary Lynn's on the call. I mean, she's here if you
I
want to
do.
hear from her.
Yeah, I see that the comment, I haven't had, Jen hasn't made me aware of that, so we can do that next week if that's all right.
Would that be soon enough?
I think Annie, were you on the call for the same reason? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can it wait a week?
Yeah, Annie, you are muted. Just a minute. You're still muted. I don't.
Tim, can you or you're doing it?
I
Kate?
was double
There you
muted.
go.
Okay.
There we go.
Double
Thank
muted.
you. We have polled our 75 to 80 collegiate graduates. So they are, started in kindergarten and now they're graduated. We wanted to do a presentation of lawn signs on the green. And we had a tentative date of that we wanted to propose to you of June 11th through June 15th.
And where did you want to put the signs?
Well, we wanted to place the signs socially distant on the green. They would be professionally done. They're 18 by 24 signs, double-sided. staked, very attractive, and we're getting artwork from each of the graduates' schools, and they will have just some simple artwork, the mascot, the school colors, the logo of the school, and the name of the graduate with congratulations. And because, we're approaching the time when people might be having, leaving for the summer, we wanted to make sure we did it before Father's Day, actually. So we have about 75, 80 graduates from Carlisle, and we've already done a survey, and we have a response in 5 days from 40 families. So they are very interested, and we're going to keep the cost down. It's a very minimal cost. We're going to have them professionally done by, a sign, a graphic artist and a sign maker.
What were the dates?
Well, we're tentatively wanted to propose June 11th, which is a Thursday, to June 15th, which is we would collect them and distribute them on that following Monday. I mean, those dates aren't set in stone. We just need enough lead time to get the signs made.
And is there a particular organization that's requesting this?
It is not. We're just interested parents, and it's a very close-knit group. They're still friends, a lot of them, and a lot of them are here, and some of them will be traveling back here to participate. So we need to give them some lead time. It doesn't take a ton of time to do the signs. It takes some time to design the signs.
Will this affect the things that are already on the green?
Pardon?
Will this affect the things that are already on the green, like the poppies and all that kind of stuff?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. We would make sure that we kept everything distant. And also, we're going to work out a schedule because we have survey results with everybody's contact information, and we'll keep a schedule. So when families want to go there and take a picture with their lawn sign, we'll make sure they're socially distant and that they're on a schedule. And then we will set them up on that Wednesday, again, tentatively. And then we will make sure they're gone by, we're thinking 5 days would give people enough time.
You think this might, so this is collegiate graduates?
Collegiate graduates, right. And many of them have known each other since Red Balloon.
Do you think it might make high school graduates feel slighted if they're not included?
The high school we've already actually spoken with the principal. Mary Lynn has met with the principal, and we made sure that it was unique from theirs. So they're doing lawn signs, and they had a bus going through and sort of an event a couple days ago. So their lawn signs are in front of their homes. And these lawn signs would have their names and would go to the parents. The both parties, to answer your question, both parties are being left out, right? All these kids are being left out. So I think that the high schoolers, in my personal opinion, I think they'll get it. College is a bigger deal than, they've gone off, they've grown up, they're adults, and now they're homecoming.
I've got a senior. I'm not sure that I agree.
You have a senior in college? You have a senior in college?
In high school.
In high school. No. I mean, the college graduates are a lot more mature. There's still some work to be done. But, to answer your question, I don't think they'll be, they'll feel the way they feel. But I also think that it's something for them to work toward. Look at that. That is so cool. I'm going to have an opportunity to graduate from college and have a family photo on the green.
Well, let's hope we don't have to do that in 4 years.
Oh, God.
When they start a new tradition.
Yeah.
Homecoming for our collegiate graduates.
Mary Lynn had her hand up a while back. I don't know if she took it down or if it just kind of disappeared.
Mary Lynn, speak.
Unmute her.
Oh, she said, I'm sorry, I didn't look at the bottom of the chat. She said she just emailed me the proposal and a copy of the sign.
Yes. Yeah. Can you put that up because she designed the sign for her son.
Okay. I can't. Let's send it. I'll forward it to you, Kate, and you can share it. Let me see if it's here yet.
It's terribly tasteful.
No, I'm sure it is.
Hold on. Have you talked to FRS yet? Because they have to also sign off on the green.
Yes, we will do that. Of
All right,
course.
I don't see it here, Mary Lynn, but I'm sure it's, well,
I can go grab it, right? I have a copy of it downstairs.
My email has not been downloading very quickly these days.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm comfortable with it though.
Yeah, I don't think we need to see the signs. I'm super
Okay,
sure.
good.
Do we need to make a motion for this one? Probably
Yep.
so, right?
We do.
Well, I can move that the Board of Selectmen authorize the Carlisle parents of college graduates to put up a family photo for each of the college graduates on the town common. Do you want the dates on there? I guess, yeah, for
Put
the
the
period
date,
of,
if it works.
for the
We also-
period of June 11th through June 15th.
So there is an overlap because we were going to also ask you for a street banner across.
Which we just approved earlier for the
I
high
know,
school
I know.
graduates.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys could work together.
Make us coexist.
And this has to be contingent with FRS approval as well.
Contingent
Yeah.
on the-
Right.
Okay.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second,
Any further discussion? Shall we have a vote?
Arnold, I.
Oscar,
Brown eye.
Louis, I.
Reed, aye. Okay. Knock yourselves out.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
My son's getting his master's. Can he get in on this?
Sure. We'll tell him send us his artwork. Is he graduating 2020?
Yeah, just finished his last week. He put in his last, project in. So
Yeah, I don't know. Why not? More the merrier.
Okay, what else we got?
Thank you
Tim?
so much.
thank you.
Sure.
Upcoming meeting schedule.
Next Tuesday.
Well, in fact, it doesn't say next Tuesday, does it? Because next Tuesday, it is the 26th next Tuesday.
Yes, it is.
Oh my God.
And we've
right.
just said we would, there are a couple things, we're gonna finalize the warrant, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
we're gonna discuss the date,
Well-
the actual date of town meeting. Hopefully Wayne will come in with a recommendation.
Yeah.
and a time.
Yeah. Well, I think we got pretty far on that warrant. There's not very
Yeah.
much left for us to
Yeah.
have to do, right? So
Yeah, you'll probably also have a recommendation from the election committee.
that would be good. That would be good. Okay. And
David's got his hand up.
hi, David.
Yeah, he's just warming up for the evening.
Yeah. No,
You're muted, David.
That's how
Okay. Just a quick note for Tim on the posting of this meeting. The Zoom address was wrong on the event details on the website. It had periods instead of slashes. It was correct on the agenda, but wrong there. Just whoever's doing that, maybe.
Tim, you're muted.
We all want to get
No,
off
I
this
thought-
call.
Yeah, okay, noted. Yeah, I'll take a look at that next time.
That's David, a stickler for detail,
Just thinking about the fact that you're going to want to be able to get more people to get on, and if you
Yes.
Right.
put a barrier in
Yeah,
for people who haven't been doing this weekly, one failure and they're done.
Yeah, no, very well received comment. June 16th master plan update. Are we really still going to have that, Barney?
Well, you had asked for it.
Oh.
You had raised it, but, and so Jan is perfectly happy to come, but if you don't think that's necessary, it's really up to the board.
I don't want to make her do work. I know that the plan is sort of delayed. It's not moribund, but, and.
Right. She made that presentation, I think maybe at one of our very last in-person meetings. And I mean, I can sort of repeat what you probably already know, Kate, about where Civic Moxie is finishing up a few things, but the big part of what's left to do is a lot of the getting the sort of last round of community input and discussion, which we can't do, until there's a change in the number of people that can gather. So we're thinking, yes, we still want to complete the contract by the end of the year, but we won't be doing the outreach, the next phase of outreach until, toward the end of the summer, early fall, including some kind of a townwide survey. So
I would say, why don't we tell her that we should put that off?
Yeah, if there's not significant progress to report, there's no reason for her to have to do it or for us to have to listen to it.
Yeah.
Okay. I will let her know.
Deer control, is that going to be ready, Barney?
Yes, it is. The question is more, are we going to be ready?
All right. Well, they're going to come, and it's going to be a joint meeting with Conscom and Land Stewardship. And
correct.
Okay, and the
I think, Tim, were you reaching out to Conscom and Land Stewardship, or was Jonathan supposed to do that?
Jonathan was doing that, but I'll be in touch with Jonathan.
Okay.
And my question for the board then is how do we want to run this? Do we want to run this as a public input, or are we just getting information from those committees and we're making our decision?
My preference would be we'll get a report from them on their recommendation and the justification for their recommendation, and we can then make a better decision.
Nathan? Yeah, okay, sorry, I didn't mean to, I thought you were.
I mean, we've had a lot of public input.
I kind of agree, so that's what, but I'm asking the board because I don't want to cut off public input,
So I think, just to be clear, what this meeting is getting input from Conscom. However,
Yes.
I am always in favor of getting public input. That's why they're public meetings.
Well, yeah, okay, well.
And we'll still have the public input portion of the agenda.
No, because you can't put it at the beginning, though, because then we can't reply to it, right?
Right.
I mean, I think that's kind of a cop-out. Putting everything up at the beginning is not fair to them.
That's why I'm asking, we will then be conducting a hearing. It's a hearing, it's not a public, comment. It's not like the comment. That's going to be shapes part of the meeting. So.
It's not a regular board meeting. That portion of it is not a regular board.
That portion of it is not, yeah.
It's totally fair if there's a lot of people there to say, okay, everybody's, restricted to, a 3-minute comment and, maybe one, 30-second, rebuttal type thing, right? In order to limit it. I mean, that's what I did last year, a lot of, and to varying degrees of success.
Well, I'll ask somebody to be timekeeper. And, the nice thing about Zoom is you can just mute them after their 3 minutes. They can keep talking all they want. I wouldn't do that, but I mean, I do think we should have a timekeeper, though.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I will ask for a volunteer.
I think we should allow for.
David's volunteering right now.
Yeah, and it can be sort of the same thing that Wayne does too, like if there isn't anybody presenting anything new, take it,
Right.
So yeah, I'm definitely always in favor of public input. I think it's important.
Yeah. Well, on the other hand, if they send us a letter, I don't want them to stand and read it to us either, because that annoys me.
Yeah, they can, but they don't need to read the whole thing, but just kind of make the point,
Yes.
My letter stated,
Right.
Done, move on.
It really only works if are we putting the packet on the web?
We always put the packet on the web.
And so everything that they have read, I mean, everything that they've sent us would need to have been in the packet. Or else they,
Of course, if they send it to us, 2 minutes before the meeting, then it's not in the packet.
and then they should have 30, or whatever it is, 3 minutes to summarize it.
Yeah, I'd go with a minute's comment myself, just if we have a lot of people.
Yeah. David, do you want to say something? You're muted again.
Accidentally, sorry. For what it's worth, I think it's highly likely that what you will get is a recommendation from both Conscom and the land stewards in favor of the hunt. And so, just to help you have more, another week to think about it, that's what you're going to get. I don't know how solid the justification is going to be, but that's what land stewards voted unanimously tonight to say they're in favor of it. And I think generally speaking, the view is the only good deer is a dead deer.
Well, we asked for specific justifications.
Yeah,
And
well,
if they don't give it to us, then that's
we can't.
all we can do is ask.
I understand. I'm just.
Yeah, we really need the justifications because.
Well, it's because the understory, it's suffering.
But that wasn't that's not the argument. The argument was we had specific questions we wanted answered.
That's fine. I don't know. Okay. I didn't see that. So when you were talking about the packet being on the web, you just mean for yourselves.
I believe that's all public information as soon as it goes out, isn't that? Is that not true, Tim?
It is not on the website.
No, it's not on the website.
Oh, it's not.
Just the agenda gets posted, right? But nothing else.
So we can't just say, well, it's in the packet, because we can't be handing them things like we are able to when we're, in person.
Yeah.
So,
Tim, you're muted, and so you were answering,
Yeah.
and I didn't hear it.
Yeah, no, I mean, the packet that you get is not on the web.
Okay.
And last thing, we got a lot of letters at the last instant from
but all I was
various
saying is,
people.
in terms of what you're getting, whatever you get and when you get it from Conscom and land stewards, if you could post that
with the agenda, maybe,
or as soon as you can, just if there's could be some on the Deer Committee site or something. The sooner that's out there, I think it's better for everybody, because you have a more informed discussion when people know what you're talking about, and people feel very left out when they don't see that stuff in advance.
Okay, so Tim, can you do that when that comes in? Great.
Sure. Yep.
Thank you.
And I might also just, if you get the response from them, Tim, with enough time, if it's just a general statement, I think it would be helpful if you could reply that the Board of Selectmen is looking for their specific reasons for the statement. Why they're supporting the hunt.
It's tough for them to meet again between now and then, but yeah.
No, but I'm hoping that the chair can sort of flesh out, if it's just a general statement, flesh out some of the details of the conversation.
I didn't mean to mislead. I don't know what,
Yeah, I know Land Stewardship's meeting tonight, and Conscom met last week, but I think they're going to meet again before next Tuesday.
It's just totally unhelpful for them to say we should keep doing it.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, right. We had that last time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any liaison reports? No.
Well, just quickly, I want to say that the recycling committee, drew me in to because they want to complete the what are they calling it? It's through the the state's Department of Environmental Quality, whatever it's called, their whole recycling side. There's the possibility for applying for a grant that's larger than the $750 that they got last year. I think it's something like $4,400. And so they are moving ahead to try to get the documentation needed to submit that grant. I believe it's by the end of June. So just wanted to let you know that that group is continuing to try to move along and get some money in the coffers to do some work next year.
Okay. All right. David, I'm going to send you our open space report. What format do you want it in?
A Word doc, just a Word doc would be
Just
great.
Word doc. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I have a motion for adjournment. I think
So move.
Nathan just did it.
Nathan just made it.
You seconded it. All those in favor, please hit your leave button.
All right, good night all.
So long.
Thank you.
Right. Right.